Good morning. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen Budget Workshop for Thursday, January 20th. And as allowed by executive order, as well as legislative action, this meeting is being conducted by a hybrid mode via Zoom. So thank you all for joining this morning. First up on the agenda is Zoning Board of Appeals.
That's me.
That's you.
So I do this budget each year for the town, based on past year's experience. I present to you a budget that's slightly lower than last year by $150 for a total of $1,700.
Okay. And the office supplies is the line item.
Right.
Okay.
It's not a line item that they use regularly. I left them $100 in case they needed something.
Got it.
But like I said, based on prior history.
Advertising and notice is the largest piece of that.
Correct, for their meetings.
Mhm.
Why is their secretarial line zero?
Mitch is there, sorry.
I got that. Because if I'm not mistaken, the administrative assistant at the planning and zoning department covers that as part of their job description now.
So that expense is just in another department's budget.
Right. Well,
Because
actually,
they do have a secretary.
It's rolled into the job description, so there might be some potential overtime, not much, or comp time if it's night meetings, but otherwise it's rolled in there. So it's not a separate expense for secretarial work there.
All right, great, thank you.
And I'll just add that it hasn't been there for some time, but because of the new system, it's pulling in things that we may have used going back to 2014.
I think it's helpful to see things like that. It highlights what's happening and why, and that's helpful. No
Right.
problem.
Just a larger scale, there was a rewrite of job descriptions a couple of years ago where most of the admins who supported some of these boards and commissions, it was added to their job description. So it's not an additional stipend. Okay. Any other questions on that? No. Next up, Historic District Commission, Randy Mccartney, Chair. How are you today, Randy? Good to see you.
Good morning, good to see you. I've done this budget, I think, for the last 3 years now, and I present to you a budget virtually the same as last year with a slight increase due to the commission secretary raise. Kathy Stewart is not an employee of the town, so she is on several commissions. As far as the income is related, in January at our meeting, we voted to increase our application fees from $50 to $75 an application. So you'll see a slight increase in the income coming up throughout the year here.
Thank you, Randy. Just out of curiosity, more than anything else, why the raise in the rates? Is it to be commensurate with other districts, or is it?
Yeah, it's commensurate with other districts and also other fees for applications within the town of Guilford.
Thank you, Randy. Anybody else have any questions?
Mitch.
Yeah, let me just add at this point, for Randy's sake, and also for many of the boards and commissions coming forward today, that I have put in a 50 cent an hour raise for the all the commission secretaries, bringing them all from 1825 to 1875. It's a 2 3/4% raise, which we felt was commensurate with others, and it's also becoming more difficult to find clerks and secretaries for some of these boards and commissions. So hoping to keep up with the times there as well. So you'll see that throughout boards and commissions today. All of them have been moved from 18 1/4 to 1875.
Randy,
Yes.
that Mitch. Randy, could you refresh me on what kind of printing the historic district needs for $500?
We occasionally will do printings. We haven't this past year, but we'll do printings if we decide to have a workshop, to have advertise and have people come in if they want to learn what the commission does. We would do printings as far as architectural sketches, portions of buildings and that sort of thing.
So are you talking like promotional brochures or?
Well, not really a
copies, that
brochure,
type of
maybe
thing?
more of like an informational packet. But in truth, we don't do a lot of printing year to year.
Okay, I mean, $500 is a lot of copies.
Yeah, I mean, if it was decided to reduce that, that would be okay with us. Like I said, we don't spend that money every year.
Mary Jane, is this, can that be coordinated? I know you've had some reductions in other copier costs in other departments. Does that make any sense for this particular one too?
I believe the other reductions are the cost of copiers. Our lease payments are going down, not actually copies.
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Is their work done at town hall and stuff, or is that copies that are purchased outside privately?
Kathy would do both. She would do them inside if she had access, or we might go to Staples. But as I said, it is fairly rare that we do it. We don't do it every year.
Okay, and the funds that you didn't expend in the past year for that just return to the general fund? You
That's
just don't get
correct.
expended? Okay,
That's correct.
okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Randy? Randy, thank you for your time this morning and the work you do for us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Okay, Youth and Family Services, where's that smiling face of Lynn Landry? Here we are. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Lynn.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good, thank you.
Oh,
I have-
thanks, Mary Jane.
I have the Youth and Family Services budget on the screen
Oh,
for
thank you.
everyone to
Great.
follow along.
Great. All right, so let's start with our full-time salaries. So what we did this past year, and I will share screen in a couple minutes of our history of encounters or appointments. We had 2 part-time positions that we made full-time thanks to the American Rescue Plan Act monies. And we had a very small grant funded position, $6,000 a year, that was also made full-time to handle the caseload that I will talk about in a couple of minutes. So that is our biggest change, most of it coming from federal monies, the increase. So that means that we eliminated part-time positions. We now have no more part-time positions. They're all full-time. All of the other line items, if you want, can I scroll up or you're scrolling up, Mary Jane?
Oh, I can.
So if you can just scroll up, all of the other position line items, I started as usual at 0 and looking at the previous years to make sure that I was coming in at the lowest cost possible. You can stop right there. Under building maintenance, I had to add lift maintenance. We have a lift here so that people who are disabled can come up the stairs. And so we had to add that in for maintenance this year. Everything else stayed pretty much the same. Under program development, if you can go up a little bit, Mary Jane, I increased that by $500 to $7,000 because everything that we do for our camp and for our other programs have gone up in cost, as you can imagine, in your own lives. Everything seems to be going up, which was the eye opener for me as I did this budget, things going up for no apparent reason. So tried to keep everything as low as possible. The only other thing that had a significant increase right there, Mary Jane, under contracted services, background checks and drug testing, that went up by about $360. That also went up in cost. And if we happen to have, a couple more interns than usual, which we did this year, that will increase the cost. And everything else is pretty much the same. Under permits, dues, and subscriptions, a little further up. Since our drug-free communities grant ended at the end of September, We are still members of CADCA, which is a federal organization for substance abuse prevention. And so I added that in, and that's $300. So that's the only other increase. If you can stop sharing that, Mary Jane, and I'm just going to share something. I'm disabled, I can't share.
Tracy will have to give you
Trey will give you
permission.
the permission.
Okay. I just want to circle back and talk more a little bit about the full-time positions and the reason for that, making part-time into full-time. Oh, here we go. So this is our history of appointments, and you can see that I've gone back a few years. I think I present this almost every year, but this was a very stark visual. If you look at fiscal year 21, which is the one we just ended at the end of June, which entails the height of the pandemic, we had over 3,000 appointments. You can see that that is more than we've ever had before. We were drowning in patients. We did not want to have a waiting list. Their kids are suffering. So last spring, we hit 100 patients. We've never done that. Our usual caseload, a manageable caseload, is 50, and we had almost 100 kids under our care. That leveled out in the summer a little bit because people go on vacation. We are now nearing 90 again. As of yesterday, we're almost at 90. So we don't have a waiting list, but because we made our part-time people full-time, we can handle the caseload safely. So just wanted to share that with you. And so the last part of the budget is revenue. And so because our revenue increased tremendously during the pandemic, I've increased our revenue projection to 135,000. I didn't go all the way up to what we made last year, what we brought in last year, because you never know. I could lose a clinician, then it takes 3 months to panel them. And so we have to wait on money. So I think 135 is conservative. We will meet that and probably exceed that. And if you subtract that from our total budget, the net cost to the town is 498,502, which I think is pretty remarkable given that we increased the full-time salaries. And that's it.
Just a comment on your revenues, Lynn. As of through December, you were at nearly 70% of your revenue objective, so you're going to exceed it quite easily, I think.
Oh, we will hit it by March.
Got it.
Lynn, I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, John.
If Mitch was raising his hand first, if he wants to go first.
Mitch.
I just wanted to, we have a disconnect on the full-time salaries, which I think is gonna end up in Lynn's favor. She was showing an offset there for the DCF grant, but did not show an offset for the JRB grant or the ARPA grant. Mary Jane, we still on for those? Because if so, that brings her number much lower than what she was showing in her narrative.
Mary Jane fixed that.
Okay, but it wasn't, your narrative, I don't think showed that. I just want to make
Yes, it
sure
does.
we're all.
Yes, it does.
You did? Okay. I thought you showed 600,000 in your narrative.
No, the corrected figure is 524,684 for full-time salaries.
Oh, I'll tell you what the disconnect is. I probably have the initial narrative,
Right.
the revised. So if
Okay.
you send me a revised narrative, that
Then we should be good.
That's the issue.
That's fine. Just want to make sure it wasn't overstated. That's all. That's great.
That just shows what my headache is doing to me this morning. I didn't even notice it.
yeah.
Just a point of clarification before we get to John.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mary Jane, the 69,000 represents the 2 part-time to full-time.
Mitch probably is best to answer any salary questions.
Yeah, there's a significant increase going from those part-timers to full-times that took place during this year due to the numbers that Lynn was explaining and COVID. So I
And
think
also
that,
contractual obligations. The new contracts raise those salaries.
Right.
Yes, that as well. There's a couple of significant, most of Lynn's employees went up about 3% with the GEA contract, but 3 of them did go up significantly as there was some adjustments made for certain positions in the school-based, the prevention coordinator, the school-based person, and as well as the administrative assistant.
So the
What's your
question,
question?
but the question really that's buried in here is, are there any more expenses that we can charge off to ARPA? These part-time to full-time, what have you charged, have you determined can be covered by American Rescue Plan?
The only thing I currently have covered under ARPA is what we had already approved.
Right,
So anything addition, we could certainly look at.
that's what we're gonna do, because this is clearly related, to the pandemic and the caseload increase.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay,
I will make that note for us to look at.
thank you. All right,
I'm
Jonathan,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. So some of the questions about the graph we saw, it was pretty enlightening to see all those appointments. I was just curious, what's the nature of those appointments? Is it for just some kind of general help from Youth and Services, or are those like psychological counseling appointments?
So we have a full-fledged mental health clinic, Jonathan, and we have had that for years. So it is psychiatric in nature. We have licensed clinicians, licensed social workers. We have a consulting psychiatrist for medication management. We are one of the few youth service bureaus that have such a clinic. Madison has one, not as big as ours. And so it's for anything mental health related in children up to 18. And we see some adults as it relates to the children.
And then does the town cover all those costs, or is there some kind of chargeback for those?
What do you mean, does the town, what cost do you think? I don't understand your question.
So
What cost?
if someone makes an appointment, do they pay any kind of fee, or is the psychological counseling all provided by the town?
No, that's what the revenue, that's where the revenue comes from. We do third-party billing. So somebody comes in and we bill their insurance. So that's where the revenue comes in. They also pay their copay. So that goes into the revenue pool as well.
Okay, I was just curious how that worked. I didn't really have it all.
Yeah. In the old days, youth service bureaus would just do sliding scales. So you could bring your kid in for some help. We might charge you $10, but about 15 years ago, we made this into a full-fledged third-party billing mental health clinic. So it's like going to the doctor's office.
Okay, and then another question about the graph. I couldn't see too well. Sorry, my vision's not too.
That's okay.
well displayed, but I wasn't sure whether it was calendar year or fiscal year, but the last bar seemed pretty high as well, the one that was marked in red. Is that for just 1 month for the calendar year?
No,
Not even 1
I'll
month.
bring it up again. That's a very good question. Here it is. So those are fiscal years. So July 1st to June 30th. So the red bar at the end there, I put that in as a comparison. That's only half the year. That's July 1st of 2021 to today.
Okay, and
so
that's, yeah.
So that
sorry.
you can see that just 6 months into the fiscal year, we're already half of what, a little over half of what we did last year.
Yeah, you're on, you know, quick doubling it up, you're on track to do
That's what
3,400
yeah.
appointments.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at
Yeah.
there and trying to point out. It looks like you're on trend for this higher
Oh,
amount of
yeah.
appointments still.
And more.
So
You
then
know,
this
it's
kind of raises a bigger question, Lynn, though.
what's that?
And the bigger question is that the money seems to be coming from ARPA. I think another source was mentioned, but I guess I'm a little bit focused on ARPA. That money can be spent over several years, I think, from the act. But I mean, how long will we have this need?
Right.
And isn't it, just generally speaking, isn't it sort of expected to be temporary and sort of driven by a lot of the woes of COVID?
Right.
And then, it irks me a little that, why would we move from part-time to full-time when we sort of expect something like that?
Right. One of the decision that was made last year when we first increased staffing for the school-based clinician and one other role was, yes, this very well may be temporary, all right? And we have 4 years worth of federal money to accommodate these salaries. So we fully intended to review post-COVID whether or not we were going to continue to need all of these resources. As I recall, that was
Yeah,
the nature of
exactly.
our conversation
Yeah.
last year. And that would apply here. It also applies at the building department. It applies at the health department and at social services. Those are the areas where we added resources last year, largely related to COVID. And the commitment was we would review this over time to see if we continue to need them, with the anticipation that we would fund them in the interim with American Rescue Plan money.
Okay, I mean, I can see the need, I can see the connection to the ARPA money. I just thought, easier to maintain part-time if you plan in the future that the demand is gonna drop as opposed to adding the full-time. And then really the last question is, it's probably in your paperwork, but can you just tell me how many full-time did you have before? And then it looks like you're adding two part-time to full-time now?
3. So I had 2 part-time positions that were made full-time. And I had a third position that was funded by a very small grant that's not guaranteed every year, only $6,000. So that's only a couple of hours a week that was made full-time. He was also a fee-for-service contractor, but we needed him full-time. But I'd like to go back to your other point, Jonathan, in that this, I liken this to the grants that the fire departments has gotten over the years, where they got federal monies to add firefighters, and then the town picked up the cost after that, because you don't want to get rid of the firefighters, you need them. The trauma that these children are going through is a nationwide phenomena. It's not going away. COVID is not going away. We thought it would be by now, but these kids are suffering. There's post-traumatic stress syndrome. There's a lot of depression and anxiety. And so, you could make the full-time positions part-time, but then you have a waiting list of 20 kids or more. And how do you answer the parent whose kid was depressed to the point of committing suicide because you didn't have the time or the staffing to take care of them? So, I think when you're dealing with kids and mental health issues, you have to take it really seriously. And it cannot come down to the dollars.
Yeah, and Lynn, I just want to reiterate the point. I completely support the position you've just laid out. But as any organization should do, periodically review staffing levels to see if they're appropriate. And if we wind up 4 years from now with you guys having an average caseload of 50, and that number drops down to levels, regular levels that we had seen prior to COVID, we will have to make some decisions about whether or not we need all of that staff. That's the normal course of business. But as you have just indicated, and I think many of us agree, that end is not in sight yet. So there's no date certain on when that might happen. But I think prudent management would suggest that we would make that evaluation at the appropriate time.
Right, so every year we'll see this chart and, God willing, if the numbers decrease, we'll talk about it then, but I think.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm always looking at my budget to make sure that, it's something that's affordable and that we're not overspending. So yeah, I agree with you, Matt.
Thank you.
Then I'm also curious, because I've heard this also in the Board of Education meetings, that there's this sort of epidemic of students being depressed and even feeling suicidal. What is driving that about the COVID ordeal for these kids? What is kind of making
It's the same thing that drives us. I mean, there are days where I don't want to, that I look at this and go, is this ever going to end? It's isolation. It's not being able to we're social creatures. So not being able to, to see family, to see friends, isolation, the pressures of school, those don't go away because we're in the middle of COVID. So if you were prone to some kind of mental health issue, this has just exacerbated it.
Yeah, I think this actually raises bigger issues than are facing the town, but some of these government policies that are self-imposed are causing this malaise.
Jonathan, this is not the time to pontificate about political stuff. Thank you.
And if I could just sort of chime in, the concept that mental health care doesn't have an enormously valuable return on investment is bordering comical, okay? These are very difficult services to get for many, many people, okay? Private insurance doesn't always provide it. Sometimes Husky doesn't provide it. It's expensive for people to pay directly for this care. And in a universe where there was a lot of money in this organization, there would be longitudinal outcomes that we'd all see, but most of us sort of appreciate anyway, showing the value of taking care of these problems early versus ignoring them or whatever point you were trying to make, so that these kids have bigger problems down the line.
Yeah.
So if you
I don't
don't
think
see
you can
that,
just ignore the broader
this is not going to be
causes
answered in a budget
this
meeting.
issue.
I ask a
No.
budget.
Jonathan, how are we
question.
gonna fix the broader causes of this issue?
Some
Yeah,
of these
this is
issues
something
are
that needs to happen
self-imposed by
offline.
government policies still.
Are
Isolation.
government policies here?
No,
So you're talking
Okay,
about
good.
national stuff, right?
state
So-
executive
national.
orders.
This is not the format. This is not a political format, Jonathan.
Not on this topic.
I don't think that there should be no discussion about what's causing our kids to be depressed.
You can have that discussion somewhere else. This is a budget
Budget
workshop.
meeting.
Well, that's important to me, what causes the
That's
kids to
fine.
get
I'd be
depressed.
happy to have a
I don't want
conversation
kids to
with
be
you.
suicidal in this town.
I'd be
I
happy-
don't want policies that make them suicidal.
Jonathan, enough of the politicization of this issue.
It's not politicization.
Yes, it is.
Recognizing the
Matt,
cause.
can I jump
and
back in?
effect. What's
No,
happening
yeah,
in
Lou,
this town.
please.
Jonathan, are you suggesting that this money is not well spent? That's the question today.
I don't think that was my point at all.
I know, but my
I don't know
question to
where
you is, because
are
we're here
really
today to
divided. I
decide,
told you I
Jonathan.
see the connection between the
Jonathan.
ARPA money and the need.
I understand you're trying to make a broader point, but we're here to decide whether this is budgetary financing that makes sense. And are you saying this money for this agency is not being well spent?
No. I did
Okay,
not
then
say-
we're done.
And then, to put those words in my mouth is unfair.
I'm
as
not
well.
putting words in your mouth. Do you have every opportunity to say, no, you disagree and try and explain why?
I just been told, asked not to talk about.
Yeah, because the
Well, you're
question
talking-
you're
you're
asking is
talking-
whether somehow some political evaluation that you're trying to make, which none of us can sort of appreciate right now, is causing the mental health problems in this environment. Okay, and frankly, that's an interesting discussion that everybody should probably engage in, because I think the answers would be surprising to a lot of people, and maybe you. But for here, the question today is, do these dollars make sense? You have a second chance to get it right.
I think it's important to consider what the school's doing, what the state executive orders are doing, and what the effect is on the
It has
population.
nothing to do with our budget, Jonathan, and that's what we're here to
Well, it
discuss.
obviously does.
It's not-
Because we're impacted by it.
It's not on the agenda for this meeting, okay?
Are
so
you a no? Are you a no for this
can't have
money?
that discussion here.
I don't know why you keep pushing that point, Lou.
Are you a
Said
no
that
for
I
this
see the
money? Why?
connection
Because
between
that's why we're here.
this with the ARPA money. I said I see the temporary demand.
So you're a yes.
If you just want to skirt the issue that some of the policies that we're following at the school and at the state level are causing kids to feel this way.
Jonathan, at the
then I
state,
think
Now
that's
you are putting words in my mouth. If you think that that argument can carry weight someday, God
Lou.
bless you.
Lou, hold on for a minute. Jonathan, at the sake of disinviting you to this meeting and having the police come in and remove you, you will not turn this into a political circus. This is a Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance meeting on the budget. It is not a political forum.
This is your meeting.
Do you
Mr. Selectman.
do you understand
I
that?
think that's a little bit of an exaggeration that I bring up a talking point at the meeting.
No, Jonathan. You have clearly tried to politicize this by pointing out policies that were established by governmental agencies beyond our control to try to make a point. Because you disagree with those policies. We're not as stupid as you think we are, Jonathan.
Matt,
So,
may I,
Please restrict your comments and questions to expenses, revenues, and the budgets that are being presented here today. Charlie?
Matt, yeah, I didn't want to get back to Lynn and put this conversation aside. Lynn, all of the conversations we're having now were similar to what we had last year. And obviously the spike was just beginning last year. And to your comments, it does not appear that this is going to be a spike that will level off. My question to you, because I know we funded some extra counseling at the Board of Ed also increased the counseling budget. if this is already on an increase over last year, and last year was the most you ever had, is this going to be enough? I mean, I'm not as worried about coming off of it, and to Matt's point, we can take a look at it if it, hopefully it comes to that point. But I'm more concerned about, is there a waiting list now? Are you able to meet the needs of the community now with this budget? Is this enough?
Thank you for that question, Charles. Yes, I think that we're at a point where we can handle more if we need to. There is no waiting list. We pride ourselves on that because the phone calls that we get from parents are that they've called everywhere and everyone has waiting lists. They can't get their kids in anywhere. So we pride ourselves on that. If we needed to, our program director, who doesn't see clients right now because she's busy with, that's her job, is programs and working in the and doing programs in the schools. She's also a licensed social worker. And so if she needed to have a caseload, we could easily give her a caseload. The clinical director could increase her caseload, and everybody could increase a little bit. So yes, we can handle it. I think we can handle more with what we have.
Okay.
I hope we don't get to that point.
And last year with the Board of Ed adding staffing, I believe they added staffing at Adams, but I don't know exactly where at this point. But I'm assuming you also coordinate with the schools. You must, with dealing with
Yes,
children.
heavily. We have meetings with the schools a couple times a month. We collaborate very closely with the high school and Adams Middle School and the others as well.
Do they handle your overflow or do you handle their overflow?
Well, technically, they're not doing clinical appointments. They do.
Oh, okay, so they refer to you?
They refer to us, yes.
Okay.
And so they refer to us, and then the parents call us. We also get, because we work with the police as well. We get referrals from them in the programs that we do with the police.
Okay, so the numbers that you presented this year, you do feel confident that you're able to serve our citizens as needed?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
So we follow up.
Sort of a related question, Lynn, as far as any potential increase on your caseload related to legalization of recreational marijuana, do you foresee any implications in the coming budget year?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We haven't seen anything yet because it's too new still, and that's what I get from my colleagues around the state. But I think as it gets, as people get used to the fact that it's legal now, we're going to see more impaired driving and more cases on our juvenile review board.
So that's a great question.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
budget-wise,
Yeah.
if we needed to revisit for that reason, we would look at your same data and, take
Right.
another during the year.
Yes. Yes, and we do get a small grant from Connecticut Youth Services Association, that money that flows from DCF down to us. And so one of our full-time salaries is also offset by $6,000 for juvenile review board case management. So whenever I can, we look for grants that can offset some of these salaries.
Great, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I've got a follow-up about the drug testing. So I was kind of curious with the drug testing, do they still test for the marijuana being in someone's bloodstream or
Yes.
presence of marijuana? How does
Yes.
the town handle that now if marijuana is a legal substance?
Well,
That's a great question.
Yeah, it hasn't come up yet. Everybody that we drug test and do background checks because they'll be working with children has come up clean. So if we do get a case like that, I'll be running to Mitch so we can figure
Right.
it out.
I've been asking for assistance from CCM and Kerma on that, and it's not yet come. But we have, knock on wood, we have been lucky so far. The only pre-employment person who tested for marijuana also tested for cocaine and was not hired. But we have not yet had that situation, and hopefully we don't get it. But and just so everyone's clear, while we're on the subject, the people that need CDL licenses, which is not Lynn's area, but while we're on the subject, the CDL licenses such as our fire drivers, all of our public works employees and our parks maintainers that have CDL licenses. All those people cannot test positive for marijuana despite the state law because a CDL license is a federal license. Unfortunately, that is not also, it also has not, knock on wood, happened as of yet, but we still do have to test for that. So that's part of the problem. That there's two different criteria depending on the position.
Now, Jonathan, were you asking about testing children or testing employees?
Testing employees concerning, I saw the drug testing went up a little bit. I was also wondering if they were only testing for marijuana. Maybe it wasn't even necessary anymore.
We don't do spot checks on employees for tests. This isn't Colorado years ago, right? However, we do pre-employment drug testing, as Mitch just described. That is a condition. That is a condition of employment is that you go through the drug screen.
And the fully answer Jonathan's question, when we test for drugs, it is not just marijuana. There's a 10-panel screening that's done, which includes marijuana at this point.
All right, thanks a lot, Mitch.
Yep.
All right. Anything further for Lynn? Lynn, thank you very. Oh, go ahead.
No, nothing further.
Lynn, thank you very much for all of your work and your responses today.
And
Presentation.
you're quite welcome. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, next up, item 4, social services. Tammy? Do we see Tammy? There she is.
Okay, here I am.
Good morning, Tammy. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
Great, thanks.
How's everyone?
Everyone's good, thank you.
Okay. The increase in my budget is in the salary line is contractual. The travel expenses were increased to include an equal travel done pre-COVID. So I really don't know if it's going to be necessary or not. It was for training, education, and conferences. The increase in utilities is based on the average cost of last year with a small percentage increase for electricity. The increase in building maintenance is a direct result of an increase in cost of services from pest control, septic, and I returned a small landscaping cost to the line item. Increase in education and training expense was a return to the pre-COVID number. With and just so you know, with staff restructuring allowed in last year's budget, we expanded our offering of programming projects to respond to the need. Along with adding additional programs during the holidays, we were able to explore and apply for grants that are providing additional resources. With the help from a grant from the South Central Agency on Aging, we were able to purchase and make available rocket fuel monitors for Guilford SEEP residents who are over 60 recipients who are over 65 and or physically impaired. We also got a grant from Connecticut Food Share, which is allowing us to make improvements to our Guilford Food Bank Client Choice Room. Some of the other things that we've accomplished was we collaborated with the Department of Agriculture to bring in the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. We collaborated with the United Way for the Department of Agriculture Farmer to Families Food Box Distribution, the Salvation Army for the Kettle, Angel Tree, and Registry for Good programs. We also brought the Unite CT bus to Guilford monthly through September of 2021 to assist with Guilford renters and landlords to help them connect with the essential rent stabilizing program made available to Connecticut renters earning up to 80% of the median area income. Additionally, there were more programs introduced statewide, regionally, and through utility companies, all of which were incorporated in our programming and offerings and listed in my handouts that I had given to Mary Jane yesterday. Some of the things you should know is all of our numbers are up more even so than last year. Even our energy right now halfway through the year, we're over what we did for a full year last year. And a lot of it is because of the demographics of our client base. And just so you know, our client base continues to soar towards an increase in senior and disabled households. The Connecticut Commission on Aging numbers for Guilford. In 2010, Guilford's over 65 population was 17.5%. In 2015, it was 22%. Currently, Guilford's over 65 population is 22.8%. The state average is 16.4. The over 60 population in Guilford is 31.9. The state average is 23%. Just so you know, here in our base of clientele, in 2018, Guilford Social Services households with a member over 60 made up 51%. Those with a disabled member were 19%. In 1920, households with a member over 60 made up 57%, with a disabled member made up 18%. And in 2021, households with members over 60 made up 60%. Currently, our client base with a over 60 household member is at 68%. And our disabled members are at 12%. What that's saying to me is our disabled population is just grown into being into the aged population because we just move them into the aged box. Consistently, just to add to those stats, our Guilford Food Bank recipients over 60, 40% 3 years ago, 46% last year. Currently at 62%. Disabled 11%, 15% last year, currently at 6%. And families with minor children, 35% 3 years ago, 28% 2 years ago, to 22% this year. What they indicate is we have an annually increasing population of need from seniors and disabled. Family household need varies from year to year, depending on what exactly is happening in that household and the economy at that time. And undeniably, Guilford has a growing population of seniors. And there is a segment of that population that has financial needs and draws upon Guilford Social Services as a resource. We also have in Guilford an Alice household that is about 24% of the of Guilford's population. It means despite working hard, they live paycheck to paycheck. And to indicate that, we did the USDA box program, which people did not have to have they didn't have to declare their income. So we did over 631 households that was the full client base last year, 2021. In those numbers, we didn't include anybody who participated in our in the USDA box program. And we had another 448 households participate in that program. Of those 448 households, 30% of them were part of the 631 households. And even more significant is only 8% of them used our food bank. So again, there is a population there in Guilford that, again, living paycheck to paycheck, and those Alice households don't necessarily are eligible for state or federal programs. So again, living paycheck to paycheck, one little deficit causes them to need the services. So again, our client base is growing. We provide for Guilford in Guilford. We provide for our seniors. Our seniors are targeted and limited. No one agency can do it all. Guilford works very closely with Guilford interfaith volunteers, the Guilford Senior Centers, to find innovative and collaborative ways to provide services to our senior population, considering how fast that client base is growing for us. But while continuing to offer supplemental and necessary services for the broader range of Guilford households. So.
Tammy, thank you very much, not only for presentation, but the work you do. And for those who are not familiar with the term ALICE, it's an acronym, Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed.
Yes.
Which is the best way to say it is the way Tammy did, people who are living paycheck to paycheck. When they have a major motor vehicle issue, repair or something like that, it's a challenge to be able to even afford that. And then there's also another profile that's housing challenge, a housing constraint. There are some other numbers. And my biggest concern here is that we're seeing an increase in those folks who are literally living on the margins. And Tammy has done a good job of explaining how that group is also aging and requiring another set of services. So Tammy, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll open it up to questions for anybody.
I would just like to comment on the Alice situation and reiterate what Matt and Tammy said. The people that fall into that category often don't qualify for certain help because they're just above the income levels. I don't know if you said that already, Tammy, but
Yes,
that's the other unfortunate thing in that. So, I mean, it is a group that is very, can be very compromised.
Yes. And that's one of the things about being able to come up with programs here that are locally based, where we can offer certain one-time emergency basic help through different funds that we put together, or donated funds or fundraisers that people do and we have available. We have the Guilford Welfare Gift Fund, which is a one-time emergency assistance fund that can help. And then we can look for other things. Sometimes certain resources that we can pull together are helpful. So people call us all the time for just direction.
And I was about to say that, Tammy, what may not be clear to everyone is that there's a wider range of consultative services that you guys provide to these individuals as well. There's a gentleman who was in my office who is a very unfortunate story and had challenges, was looking to get access to the food bank. Well, one of the requirements of our Guilford Food Bank is you have to be SNAP eligible. You have to, well, Tammy, you can clarify that, but you have, Tammy, go ahead.
If you're eligible for SNAP, you have to pursue it.
Right, and that's the point. So this individual had challenges in trying to access the federal system to apply, and Tammy's team worked closely with this individual to get him SNAP eligible, so that individual could take advantage not only of the SNAP program, but of the Guilford Food Bank program. There are also clients that they work with, I know at least a couple, where they will help them pursue Social Security disability income. They work through all of the, and when she says access to these programs, it's not just the programs that are local here, the Energy Assistance Program, the Food Bank, some of the other programs that their team runs. This is access to state and federal programs as well. And that's the consultative service that they do. So anyway, sorry to steal the thunder on that. And anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions and comments. Again, Tammy, thank you for your work you do. And, to our point that we were making before with youth and family, I think a lot of the increase, I would imagine that people that were right at the cusp of needing your help with the pandemic and everything probably got pushed over the edge a little bit. And I don't know if this is going to be a peak or not, but I appreciate all the effort you're doing there. The questions I have are not, so much for the budget as much as long range thoughts. Is the building working out at this point in time? Because over the years, there's been discussions about the building that you're in. I know the parking lot's been redone and everything, but should we prioritize your building, or do you think you're settling in at this point, or what are your thoughts about the building?
Well, to be honest with you, it would be
That's what
nice.
we need.
Let's be honest,
Yeah,
please.
hello.
Well, one of the things is that it is small here. And one of the nice things we had, we were able to, at some point last year, we were able to get an intern in here. And unfortunately, now that we were able to get her here, well, I don't know, we worked things around. It was nice having an intern, and to put one, now that we have 4 people here, it's tight. And to get an extra person in here, it would have been nicer. We had an offer of an intern this past year, and we couldn't take, Southern actually offered us an intern, and we couldn't take her because we had no room to put somebody, because there's not another space for a confidential meeting with residents. It's pretty much open, and we just, it would be nice to have another meeting room where
Okay,
somebody
but
could meet
that
with
answers
somebody
my question.
one-on-one.
That it's something that has to be continually looked at this point in time. And
Yeah.
that brings into my next question was, last year, I think it was last year's budget discussion, the issue of a need for an administrative person, whether it be a intern or whatever. A lot of it was data entry and that type of thing versus actually counseling. And I think you've answered that question, that with the space constraints, even with the addition and up to 4 people now, do we still have that administrative issue where you're doing a lot of data input and that type of thing?
Well, we have the administrative assistant and we have a program coordinator. Those 2, they don't really meet with anybody. The administrative assistant sits out in front, greets people in the beginning. The program coordinator, she steps in once in a while when we need someone to help take an application for somebody. But it would, like I said, it would be nice to have someone else working with, like, we have an extra computer here. It would be great if we were able to have somebody be able to sit down with a resident who wants to file an application for the food, for SNAP, but just doesn't need somebody to actually do it for them, but just somebody to work with them while they're doing it. We just don't have that extra office where somebody can work with somebody confidentially.
All right, on that note, and this is probably not time or place, but maybe just a quick answer. In discussions about your location, the issue has come up in relocation about privacy and convenience and that type of thing. Would that be a priority over? I'm just thinking, should we consider additions to that building versus finding better space for you? Needs further discussion? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, it's lovely being here. And
Is it convenient and yet people have enough privacy?
right.
Is that okay where you are at this point in time?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's fine.
All right. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I've got a very
Anyone else?
small, I've got a small item. Good morning,
Yes, sir.
Tammy.
Good morning.
Tim, you're terrifically enlightening. Thank you very much. And it's a small thing, but I'd rather see the money diverted a little better. And I think this came up last year. Your copier costs as much as your utilities plus building maintenance. Can we get you a better deal? I'd rather see the money diverted somewhere else into your program. It just astounds me that it's $5,000 a year to run for copier and lease and supplies. Maybe somebody else can get you a deal.
But one of the challenges, Bob, is that that's a 4-person office. Many of the other copier leases cover multiple departments. That being a standalone facility, but certainly we can take a look at that and see if there's something.
I don't know how that compares to other offices. I know, we've got a few machines around our place and it's nothing in that realm.
Well, I will tell you that ours is it's a copier, it's a fax machine, it is our,
Printer.
and the other thing.
Scanner, printer, fax, yeah.
It's color. We do our own posters here. We do, so we don't, unless I go for the big, waterproof sandwich boards,
Yeah.
which I send out for. But we do we do posters, and we laminate them ourselves. We do our own booklets here. We do a lot of printing here
Okay, all
for
right.
everything.
I don't want to belabor it, just catches my eye.
Are
Yeah.
those posters in the copier budget or is that a separate line item somewhere?
Well, what I use, most of my posters are for our programming, our local programs.
Not what
or
they're
the food-
for, but when you send out
What I'm gonna tell you is I use like the food bank. If I do posters for anything for the food bank, I use money food bank money, which is all privately.
Okay, so it's not in the copier line item.
Not in the copier line item, right?
All right.
Jane, want to make a point?
I just wanted to make a point that the copier lease lines include not only the lease for the copier, but copier charges for use.
Yeah.
So if she's doing a large volume of copies, that would increase her costs.
Okay, anything further for Tammy? All right, Tammy, thank you very much for that very detailed report.
Thank you.
All right, item 5, tax collector. Deb, are you here?
I'm here. I have a big mask on. You can't see me.
Okay,
My laptop is not working right now.
okay,
All right, so you have the tax collector budget in front of you. Salaries went up, education and training. Advertising went up because we now have the water main bill, so I have to put legal notices in for them also. And that's it. Mostly everything else on our budget.
just quickly, your training, education and training is going up largely because we have a new employee in your office.
We do, and now they require that the tax collector, we have to take courses to get recertified. So
Right.
we have, and our assistant tax collector, she has to go through her courses, so.
Got it. And I see you've reduced a couple of line items, overtime being one of them, and your printing is actually going down as well, and your copier lease nominally, so,
Yeah,
all right. Good. Should we, Deb, do you want to take advantage of the opportunity to talk about how much revenue you bring in?
very much. I don't have the exact figure, but I could,
I'm just teasing, Deb, just teasing.
Net that out of her costs.
Exactly,
Yeah, take a
exactly.
profit of.
Because there are departments who make sure we know, like the fire department, Lynn, they make sure they tell us how much they bring in, but. And I see Kim smiling as well, because she'll probably say that.
you guys know how important we are in here, so.
You got it. Does anybody have any questions for Deb and the tax collector budget?
I would just like to note that Debbie's office worked very well with us when we implemented the Mulberry Point assessments, and that has added to their workload down there. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. In the event that folks don't know, that project, the water main project, allowed for residents to pay in a lump sum or amortize the costs for their portion over 20 years. That obviously required working with our software vendor who produces tax bills and that kind of thing. So it's an overlay tax, which is going to come out twice a year. And it's going to come out in between the traditional billing cycles of January 1 and July 1 and January 1. So it's October and April, right? So, but and it is more work, but and quite honestly, it went very smoothly.
Yes.
Deb Deb and her team pulled it together with Mary Jane, and it really went flawlessly.
Great.
So,
Effort. It was wonderful working with everyone. So.
all right, if no further questions to Deb, we're going to move on. Thank you very much, Deb.
Hey, and I'm going to turn you over to Anna. She's right here.
Right there. All right, Anna, the town clerk.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hello. Okay, so mine is pretty simple too. Obviously salaries have increased a little. I am asking for more money for part-time salaries. With the last 2 elections, we did need a lot of part-time help. I don't know what this year is going to bring, so I just thought I'd put it in there. But everything else, slightly more for recording expenses due to the increase in land record transactions. We've had more deeds recorded on the land records, so that bumps that up a little bit. But then when you look at my revenue and you see the amount of money we took in for conveyance tax, I don't think anyone can complain about that.
There we go.
Yeah, and so another one boasting about the revenue. Everything else pretty much same. Supplies, a little bit more for office supplies due to mainly toner cartridges, which are so expensive. And if I leave it where it was, we won't have money for anything else. So a little bit more for office supplies. But everything else pretty much the same. Permits, dues, subscriptions, that stays the same every year. Education, still have one person going through classes, my new assistant. So that's pretty much it.
Got it. Anna, thank you. I just want to point out to confirm Anna's statement about revenues. Through December, you are at 69% of your revenue target, so you're clearly going to exceed that by a substantial amount.
Yeah.
And that's largely related to real estate transactions?
Yeah, I mean, the conveyance tax mainly.
Right.
We had a lot of big sales last couple of years, which really bumps that up.
Very
I have a
Mary Jane,
Yeah,
please,
before you
quote.
ask a question, Sandy, I'd just like, Mitch, could you please address, she did mention part-time salaries because of offsets. We're not seeing that. Could you address part-time and overtime for the town clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mary Jane. Anna has requested $5,000 for absentee ballot workers, as she's already explained, based on the elections, recent elections and the anticipation of the upcoming ones, as well as $1,800 in overtime. Both of those amounts, Mary Jane has put in for ARPA grants, and I think there's an agreement there that's certainly the COVID-related situation that's caused all that. So there's $6,800 that's added to Anna's budget, which is offset by those grants.
That was my question, because it was showing as 0 and she was at, so thank you.
Other questions for Anna? All right. Anna, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Registrar of Voters, I see Gloria's there, and I don't know if Lisa's on board as well, but good morning, Gloria.
Good morning. As you can see, our budget for the coming year is much higher than I think it has ever been in this department. But there are reasons for that. Let's see. This year, it's going to be the governor's race and a complicated ballot and more people at the polls. That's one reason. That is always a complicated ballot and it costs more, and we do need more people at the polling place. Another reason is the mandatory salary increase, and it's up to $14 for that year. Okay, let me just look over my notes. So that's why the really big increase for the poll workers. We are going to have a primary, I'm sure we're going to have a primary for at least one party, maybe. So that's in our salary line item. And this year we put in another primary. Usually we just put one primary at a low rate, but last year it just blew up the budget because we had two primaries. So in talking to Mary Jane, it's best to put in as much as we think it's going to be, and hopefully we won't have so many primaries. But, you know, they are, everyone can have a primary if they petition right. Let's see, let me go down the line. Our salaries, it's contractual. That's the part-time salaries, the poll worker salary. I had said it's the mandatory increase and having more people. And in that salary is the absentee ballot workers. Now, I know the town clerk takes care of the absentee ballot worker up until election day. On election day, the registrar takes care of that salary. Referendum expenses, we upped it to $3,000 from $2,500. And with the primary and the November election, this is programming our memory cards. For the referendum, we have our own memory cards. Unless the questions are more than what our memory cards can handle, we have to reprogram them. Hopefully, we will have one referendum, and that is what we budgeted for. We have been told by the company that programs our cards that there would be at least a 10% increase in programming the cards, at least. Our canvas, which is going on now, which is a very slight item, I think it's $500. And that's the price of the envelopes and the price of the company that supplies us all the information to create our canvas. Primary expense, it's up a lot because the primary has increased and we have scheduled for two. Expenses and travel, it's the same. Of course, we try to use the company car when we can. Maintenance contract, that went up to $2,700. That's the tabulators and the scanners. Copier lease, now that went up, and we had two line items, one for copier and one for color. So I did question that, and it did go up double from last year. I don't think we ever had a color quote on that. Office supplies, this is just standard if we need anything. Office equipment, the same thing. We don't anticipate needing anything. Permits and dues, that's for registrar's dues yearly. Education and training, that is for our moderators and for the registrars twice a year at conferences. And of course, last year we had a Zoom conference. You know, I don't know, we're scheduled to have one in April, so that is in person. Let me see. Notes, I think that that is all. I did attach the explanation for each line item. Okay, that's
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Questions?
Gloria, this is a small thing, but small things add up with all the different departments. For the office supplies and office equipment, you kind of indicated that those monies are placeholders. Do you have, you may have included this, I don't have access to it right at this moment. Do you have real expenses for the year before? I mean, did you really spend 1,100 on supplies and 1,400 on equipment?
No, I think we bought a shelf, and we also our binding machine broke, so that was $400 for that. We don't really, you know, in that category, it's also batteries for our tabulators and scanners, which come to about $30 each, but that's it.
Okay, so it's possible that you don't get to these levels, but I guess this is okay, I understand. Thank you.
I got a question about the absentee ballots, which might also be connected to the clerk's budget, but Gloria, can I assume that the clerk needs extra money and part-time help to actually count the higher volume of absentee votes? Sorry, maybe that's a question.
Well, registrars count the absentee ballots on election day. The town clerk processes the absentee ballots from the minute the town clerk sends out an application if needed. And they come back, they assemble the envelope and the ballot, and they make sure that that person is a voter on the list, just like the town clerk would, and they mail it out. So it's up until election day.
Okay, that was my confusion. So their extra cost is in sending them out. That's
Well, sending them out, I don't know how they deal with postage for the absentee ballots. I don't know what the town clerk does.
okay.
If
I
that
thought I should
figure,
ask, and then it went by me a little, and it just occurred to me to ask a little bit about that extra.
I don't know if she has postage, if the town clerk has postage in her budget.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And I did forget one thing about the audit. Usually we get picked for a mandatory audit, which is just pulling one of the precincts out of a hat. And the last two, I think it was November and August or something, we chose to go up to Hartford to use the Yukon created hand scanner. So that saved a lot of time, and I did have something in the audit budget for that amount. So it's either having 12 people in a room hand counting all the ballots, or Lisa and I driving up to Hartford and using their scanning machine for about 3 hours. So that is a lot less time, a lot less money doing it that way. Thank goodness for Yukon creating that hand count machine, which is a machine.
Any other questions for Gloria? No. Gloria, thank you very much. For that
Okay,
very
thank you.
Detailed report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up, 8 is Building Department. Kim, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Thank you. You?
Kim,
Doing well. My line items that actually changed a bit is for part-time salaries, printing, education, and I have a decrease in vehicle mileage. And regarding part-time salaries is regarding we are overloaded with inspections requests, and myself and my inspectors are doing at least 8 to 10 inspections a day. So that is the reason why for the increase, plus with all the new construction, interior work going on, new commercial projects that are coming down the line. This is needed regarding the part-time assistance that I have requested. Regarding the printing, the increases for that is for scanning. We've had, when we implemented Munis in 2014, a lot of the permits that was issued and probably finalized were never actually closed out in our system. And since we are going into InterGov, we need to have all these applications and permits closed out. And if they're not closed out, then we need to contact the homeowners and to let them know these permits are open, that they need to have a final inspection and then be closed out. And they also have to pay an extension fee regarding how many years they are open. So we need to have all that in place and ready to go. So we do implement into InterGov, there is no problem regarding the transfer of data. The next one, the line item that did increase was education. With more of the part-time assistance that I am receiving, I have to help make sure that my inspectors keep their license up. To be a building official, you have to have 30 credits. For every 3 years, they check to make sure you have your 90 credits. Otherwise, you can lose your license. Due to COVID, a lot of the
I called registrars very quick.
I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Sorry.
Somebody should have been muted.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Some of the conferences that we used to go to for us to get our requirements of our credits, a lot of them have decreased because of COVID. So we have to do a lot more that are online that we have to pay for. And the decrease in the vehicle maintenance is because I have a new truck. So I won't be needing to go to the parks regarding that.
Hopefully, that's right.
Hopefully.
So Kim, I understand what the backlog of scanning information that needs to happen, but double the cost of printing is a new machine, more toner. I mean, what is the second $11,000 for?
Oh, no problem. That's actually an outside company. We don't do that in-house. For the state regulations, we have to have an outside company do it. It's not something we can do ourselves. So that is the reason why regarding that.
So do you think next year at this time, you'll go back to $11,000 because the backlog will have been caught up?
Hopefully, yes, I do.
So this is potentially a one-time increase, hopefully.
Right. If we're able to get everything in, yes, that's what we are working on now to do.
So, and that's related to closing out permits?
Closing out, yeah, permits from the, once we integrated with Munis, a lot of the permits of the inspections that were done, some of them were finalized, but they were never closed out in the system. So right now they're all stating that they're open. And we can't actually go into a new system with all of these open permits that are actually really closed. So we need to have a complete, as much as we can, accurate system going into Intergov.
Mary Jane just,
Oh, sorry, Matt.
Mary Jane just reminded me that this is an opportunity for us to use the technology fund money. This is part and parcel of the program to migrate to the online permitting system, which qualifies A, under technology, and B, under American Rescue Plan, because we are creating safer access to government services. So there's a couple of ways this can be paid for. So it would be my expectation that additional expense will be removed from this budget.
Okay, and that gets the, I was going to follow up on Sandy's point. It feels a little more like contracted services. Last thing I want to do is micro guess why things end up in different line items, but if that's going to be the answer, it solves it, because it does feel like that.
Yeah, well said, though. Any other questions for Kim? Kim, I have one. This is one that I think we've talked about. We talked about last year when we gave you an additional part-time inspector based on the volume. I think we still, over the next several months, need to make some kind of evaluation on whether or not we should go to a full-time building inspector, assistant building inspector, or whatever title you want to go to, as opposed to the couple of part-timers that we have there. I know this includes George Godovan as well as the other couple of inspectors, but I think we should challenge ourselves over the next couple of months to evaluate whether or not it makes sense to move to a full-time position. Again, against the backdrop of, is this rise in building activity COVID-related, or is this the new norm? And realizing that with a full-time employee comes some other expenses, healthcare, which, Mitch, I think that number is what, $26,000 a year for healthcare, FICA contribution.
Going up.
And 401k contribution. So why don't we, Kim, Mitch, Mary Jane, myself, will challenge ourselves over the next couple of months to do some kind of analysis to see whether or not it makes sense, and then weigh that against the potential temporary nature of the increase in activity.
Okay, no problem.
And Matt, just aside from the financial situation on that, we are having a difficult time filling this position, these positions. In fact, one is still open at the moment that Kim is trying to fill.
Yeah, I think, I would assume that it might be easier to find a full-time as opposed to some, a part-timer who's doing, 8 or 16 hours a week.
Right.
Might be more attractive to someone who's looking to advance their career, or change their career, and move into a full-time position. So,
And that's exactly my point. It may or may not be financially advantageous with all the benefits you've laid out, but it may be advantageous towards some continuity in the office. But we will Kim and I will explore that with you going forward.
Okay.
thank you. Anything else on building?
Actually, I do have a quick question.
Certainly.
Hi, Kim, how are you? Regarding the revenue, this kind of somewhat related to the fact that I know that the building permit fees went up, and I know that this really isn't a result of that. I don't think that was already implemented. Was it in this fiscal year or the last fiscal year that the fees?
I think it was last.
It was
It
last
was.
week.
So this increase in the revenue is not a reflection of that. However, it is based on the activity. I guess a related question to what our first selectman just asked was, is this a revenue number that you think will continue? Is there any way of telling, just based on the trending, that will be a continued number that is being proposed, or will that possibly come back down as well? Because we, as a Board of Finance, we've been seeing those, especially the single family homes, go up quite a bit, and those can be large fees, but also just in general, they've been going up. And last year was the rate increase, was the permit fee increase, but now this seems like it's more of a more here to stay. Would you say?
I do believe so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mike,
and
Mike.
as of right now, I just did a quick run from July to yesterday, and we're almost at 500,000.
Yeah, you're currently at 82% of your revenue budget, so you'll probably be done with that by March. And Mike, to your larger question is, do we see this as sustainable over the next couple of years? I think the answer to that is yes. The number of projects that are currently in front of what one was just approved at planning and zoning, the old Arrow paving. That's going to produce a significant amount of revenue. There is the affordable housing project on Hubbard Road. There are at least 2 other potential housing developments up on the west end of Route 1. There is the 25 unit housing development on State Street. And there is continued activity up on Long Hill Estates. So I foresee a couple of years of revenue levels commensurate with what we've had the last couple of years. Kim, would you agree?
I totally do. Yes.
Thank you for the background. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. All right. Anything further for Kim? Kim, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Item 9, natural resources. Kevin, how are you today?
Good. Good morning, everybody.
Kevin?
So the similar budgets as previous years, as indicated by everybody else, the salaries are contractual. So those I have no control of. Those are went up due to contracts. The other items that went up a little bit is geographic information systems. This increase in that budget is because of one, we're with the InterGov integration now, we need to do more updates of the background maps from basically a yearly plan to a quarterly plan. So there's a little bit more expense with that piece there. And also the hosting services and management of the InterGov with our contractor. So that created the increase within that line item there. Advertising is for the notices for planning and zoning. And those are dependent on the number of applications received. Currently, there hasn't been any change in legislation, which allows us not to post in the newspaper. So we're required to do those postings there. Office supplies, this is for supplies needed for the environmental planning office, anything needed for Wetlands Commission, Ag Commission, Conservation Commission, Tree Advisory Board, any of those type of things are covered with this, signage and stuff for open space, all that comes out of this budget here. Tree removal is my biggest item here, with a increase of $5,000 increase from last year's budget. Just endless number of trees being taken down. The cost for traffic control, required traffic control for us now out there to maintain safe work zones and keep the public happy as we're going through these zones here. As part of this price here. Dues and membership. Those are fees for associations involved with the different commissions and stuff in town here. My association fees with the Tree Wardens Association. And the biggest ticket here is the Southwest Conservation District, which is $1,500 there for their assistance and membership there. They provided some help with overview of some plans as needed and help with conservation issues to the general public for members of the town of Guilford. Education and training, similar thing here. That's shared between myself and the different commissions representatives there. And also, I didn't actually indicate in here, but also Frank, my land steward, also training for him with maintaining his license for herbicide applications with managing invasive species on our open space properties. Vehicle maintenance, that's to cover vehicle maintenance and fuel, because that comes out of that same line item there. So it's just not repair the vehicle, it also covers the cost of the fuel. For my pickup truck, the Low Ranger pickup truck and the F-350 pickup truck that the land stewards use. And then the $5,000 for open space management, which is utilized by myself and the volunteer group there for maintaining the trails in town. With the new piece that we took over as part of the open space subdivision on Long Hill Road, there'll be improvements needed there with kiosks, some boardwalks and bridges there. And tied into this is also the increased cost with building materials, lumber. Those things have at least doubled in cost, which had an extra impact to the budget here. And last year is actually when it was really higher, triple the price. We actually did basically, like I say, Band-Aid, but we didn't do full repair things. We just replaced the major damaged boards, waiting for the pricing to go down because it was just really high and actually hard to get pricing and materials. And then we have a revenue from our wetlands applications projected at $12,000. And that's seen some increase this past year with the revised fee schedule that we had.
Kevin, thank you. A couple of quick questions from me. GIS system increases, is that a one-time event or is, Jake's gonna be thumbs up. Is that a one-time event or do you anticipate that our annual carrying costs are gonna increase regardless?
Yeah, those aren't one-time fees. Those are going to be fees which could with hosting fees and depending on the other outside contractors, the cost for that service there. And then his license fees and stuff, which at times go up for him being able to host this stuff.
Thank you, Kevin. Second one is no surprise to anybody. Tree, another 5,000. I think we took you up to 125 last year or the year before. From I think we were down around 110 a couple of years ago. And I'm looking at your current expenditures, and I know I'm jinxing myself, Kevin, because we are in the middle of storm season. But you're including encumbrances, you've only spent 52,000. Do you foresee the 125 being enough for this year?
Fingers crossed, no major storms. I do right now have proposals out for work on Westlake Avenue with about 35 trees being removed, and the current pricing for that job is currently coming back at just over about $22,000. And I have other smaller jobs which I'm pricing out. So I'm at least over the next month or so, I'm looking at a probably between this big job and other small ones, at least $40,000. And there's still other stuff I still need to get pricing that I still have out there.
Okay.
It's definitely gonna hit at least 125.
Kevin, Matt, can I jump in?
Yes.
That raises a question. So the $5,000, I wonder, it has the expense associated with retaining these contractors per tree sort of gone up? Are we just keeping with an additional $5,000? Is that just keeping us even, or does that give you an opportunity to actually do more work?
They're just keeping us even, is looking at what we spent last year and trying to just keep up with those figures there. It's so hard to really come up with a accurate number without really having somebody that can drive down all the roads and actually log all the dead trees and stuff like that. So these are just looking at past projections and trying to keep that flowing right now. As I indicated too, part of it is flagging services for maintaining traffic control. We do get calls if there's not really a traffic control out there. Sometimes the police get concerned and want somebody up there to help with traffic control. And actually, I find sometimes with the traffic control there's a fee for that, but there's also a savings on the tree company side because they can work more efficiently by having two people out there blocking traffic for 5 minutes where they can do a big cut, drop stuff in the road and clear the stuff out of the road. Sometimes they have to bring, if they didn't have traffic control, sometimes they have to bring a third person, which really isn't certified to be in the road. They don't really have they're dressed in their cutting clothes. Yeah, there's a vest there, but they don't quite look official as somebody else with the signage and stuff there.
Okay.
So
Kevin, would there ever be a point where it might be cost effective to bring that function in-house? I mean, if it got, obviously, they're very dangerous and needs a lot of equipment, but would it ever come to that level?
I mean, there are towns which do have their own tree crews there, and some of the stuff it probably definitely could help with. I mean, but there's going to be, for us to man that type of thing like that, you'll have to have like a 3-man crew out there, a truck. We have a chipper truck and stuff like that, so I need to worry about, but we need a bucket truck. So there's an expense for that. I'm not sure. I think that's like probably $350,000 to $500,000 ticket, and maintenance and hydraulic testing on that. But sometimes I do look at it going, because some Public Works does some maintenance trimming and stuff like that, and they're have their safety bucket within their loader, but doesn't get them high enough, and then they're reaching the stuff and probably getting above a safe level. So sometimes it may be best for them to have a bucket truck for their own maintenance work that they do for on the roads that they do trimming back on for their chip sealing and stuff there. So
Kevin, do you think there's enough work between, let's say, Branford and Madison and or Durham for a shared services situation?
For ownership of a truck type that and sharing it out?
Yeah.
I think a part would be more looking into potentially what if a truck is available, but to be leased for a period of time, 2 months or something like that, what the cost would be for something like that versus ownership. It's just a question to throw out there.
Yeah.
Versus shared services, you might be able to lease something for a short term.
Susan, did you have another question? Because
No.
Kevin, I know that the ash trees were problematic for the past few years. Is there any other tree disease that's coming down the pike that is going to be adding to your woes?
I think we're reaching the peak for the ash trees in Guilford. I think the numbers of ash trees will probably be declining that we'll be removing in the next couple of years. I think we're also cleaning up the damage from the gypsy moths from a couple of years ago with the issues there, but there is a new issue pushing in from New York with oak trees again. So they're on a watch out for that. And then there's the lantern beetle, I think it is, which also potentially could affect some maple trees. Which is
How about
been spotted in the
Eversource?
areas there.
How about Eversource? I know they had their big push there back last year or so. Are they still funding tree trimming, or where do they stand?
The Eversource is still funding tree work. This past year, they did a concentration of work with removals up in North Guilford on the up on Wilbur's Lane and West Street area there. And I think they have additional work looking for on County Road currently for removals. They also a couple of years ago they did some work on Moose Hill Road. So they are still have that budget for large removals. And
I'm assuming you're coordinating with them. I mean, if it's a tree that's affecting their lines, we're not cutting it down.
If it's a tree really close to the wires there, I go to them first and try to get them to remove it because if it's too close, our contractors can't even touch it.
Okay, well, that's the question. I just want to make sure that we are doing that stuff.
Yeah, so I'm in contact with their arborist. They actually have a new arborist for the region here, which I met recently, and so I've been in contact with them regarding any trees really close to the wires. I try to get them to do those first before I take those on.
Got it. I just want to take the opportunity. Kevin did a great job last year working with Eversource, particularly in North Guilford. He got them to significantly expand their efforts in North Guilford in a couple of locations where, well, it might not surprise you, one of the most frequent calls into our office here at the Selectmen's office is about trees, dangerous trees and trees that need to come down. And Kevin was able to get Eversource to do a good deal of work. Earlier this week, Eversource sent out to every municipality in the state the list of their tree trimming projects that they have going. The number escapes me in terms of the number of miles of road that they're going to do for not only their main distribution, but the secondary routes that they will be taking care of as part of their requirement with the Public Utility Regulatory Authority. But I also just want to mention that it's not just the storm, it's not just reactive work that we're doing, when people call in or so forth. Kevin actually has, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin, in the VOC system, you have identified trees throughout town and areas throughout town. And I think you just mentioned Westlake. There's probably no shortage of those opportunities going forward. So yes, to do preventative work. So yes, the 125 or the 130 could probably be 150 or 175. Am I mistaken, Kevin?
Right, and like I said, part of that is the like I said, the ability to get out there and get all those listed and marked and stuff on top of other opportunity job things I'm doing here. But yeah, there's definitely other stuff out there. One major hit area which I need to look at is Rockland Road, which is a one way in, one way out road, and that one's been hit quite a few times recently, and that has issues with the oak trees and ash trees dying on that road there, and others along Lake Drive there. So there's always these neighborhoods which we're still trying to clean up from this ash disease problem there. As Matt indicated, yeah, we got the reports from Eversource, and they're looking to do maintenance trimming on about 50 miles of roads in Guilford and backbone type work, which goes into some of the heavier trimming on about 4 miles of roads in Guilford.
Thank you, Kevin.
Kevin, I got just one more for you, a little bit on the subject of GIS. I wanted to just know a little more information about GIS, seeing how we've got the almost 9% increase, and it looks like it's running about $32,000 a year for the software. Is that software commercial? I think it maybe is government. And then is there any alternative that might give you the information you need to get the job done?
The major part of my budget is upgrades to our end of the system there. Yeah, there's things out there you can look at, but it's maintaining our database in town of assessors information of who lives where their parcels. If a lot gets split, we create that. and then through freedom of information, then all these other things out there on the internet pick up those sources. So we're actually the main creators of some of this GIS data, which then you see for other locations on the internet there.
So we're just kind of highly integrated to GIS and we're sort of married to that system.
Yes, this is a system of integration of where our assessors, our property owner information's tied to parcel information. So emergency services, police department. Now with our intergov connection that we're building for building permit software, where all this information is able to be exchanged between departments. We can tell in the field where a property is, type up the address, find out where it is, find out if it's an interior lot. Seeing that, they can switch to an area of view, see the property, what's the house layout, what other hazards might be around it for emergency services and stuff there. Our planning and zoning, we use it as a methodology for building permits. If somebody's putting a generator in, they use that mapping to show the location where the generator and propane tanks are going. As long as it's not close to a property line, those maps are able to be utilized. But once you get something really being built to close to a property line or major construction, then we require a survey. But these smaller permits and stuff like that, the contractors go on to our town GIS page there. They print out a map. They get the property information needed for the permits off that page, and they able to print the map up, mark it up, and provide that as part of their permitting process there. We use the mapping and
Yeah, Kevin, I think the cogent point here is this is a multi-layered system, data system. It is not just simple GIS. How do I get from point A to point B? This is a mapping software, and then we layer on data layers from the various departments here in town. And I dare say, outside of email and probably Munis, this is the most used system that we have based on the number of departments that you've just listed. So,
Matt, you had mentioned earlier using some ARP funds for some of the P&Z updates or changes in the system. Would that be at all appropriate for this?
Well, that's why I asked Kevin, was this a one-time issue relative to moving to the online permitting system? And I think he said, no, this is probably going to be an ongoing additional maintenance layer. But we'll certainly take a look at that, Charlie. I appreciate that.
Just another clarification then, does Kevin's department have the burden of the cost of the system even though it's shared across other departments?
Unfortunately, he does. That's right. Because so much of it deals with natural resources.
It doesn't sound like there's any reasonable alternative.
Well, there's also the theory that Kevin was the only one who had who was data savvy and took over ownership of the GIS system several years ago, and therefore it wound up in his budget. So he drew the short straw.
But obviously, there's no alternative. It's ingrained in the way we're doing business.
Yeah, GIS started through natural resources and planning departments, and then as people have seen the uses for it, it's expanded out to these other departments and avenues lately over the past 5, 6, 10 years.
This service continues to be a point of discussion at the Council of Government and also at the state level. The state is talking about providing a single GIS layer for every municipality. That's been bandied about in the legislature for a couple of years now, and the same set of discussions are happening at SCROG. My concern there is the forklift upgrade to go from one platform to another. But if the state is going to pay for it and or CROG is going to pay for it, then certainly it'll be something we look at that time.
So maybe one more clarification though, this bill and this increase, who do we pay that to? Is that a state?
No, it's to our GIS vendor.
The GIS vendor, and
Right.
Is that a commercial vendor?
Kevin, what's the name of the company?
New England Geosystems. They're our vendor for this.
And in fact, we just engaged them. They provided a significant amount of data and formatting information to which at no cost as part of our arrangement with them.
Okay,
As part of our implementation process of the.
so
online
the
permit.
increase came from them.
Anything else for Kevin? Kevin, thank you very much. Well done.
Welcome.
All right, item 10, planning and zoning. George, are you there? There you are.
I'm here.
Good morning. How are you?
Morning, everybody.
Good morning. All right, so you here all day?
With respect to the planning and zoning budget, full-time salaries is obviously the vast majority of our budget. That's a little bit of a moving target right now. It's probably going to be significantly lower in the next year due to personnel changes, but right now, none of that has been totally solidified. We are actively searching for a new town planner and zoning enforcement officer, which is the bulk of that line item. Where it's going to end up is a little bit hard to predict, but that number is likely to be smaller the next year than what is shown here. Maybe Mitch can make some predictions along those lines, but probably not, because it's kind of wild out there trying to hire people. I'd call your attention to the next item down the list, the $10,000, which is identified as code maintenance. As you may know, we're in the process of updating the zoning code, rewriting a whole new code that's budgeted under the capital budgets area, not under this particular budget. We're almost complete with that project. We have about $12,000 left in the capital budget to fund the completion of the project. I'm not certain that that's going to be quite enough money to complete the work, which we hopefully will do within the next 6 months. So I've put in a request for an additional $10,000, which I would call a contingency, to make sure we have enough funds to complete the zoning code update. Again, that'll be it's wrapping up right now. There's a significant meeting tonight. Most of the work is done, and we're in the public comment phase of all of this now, but that's a little bit unpredictable as to how that's going to go and what kind of changes we'll have to make as a result of the public peer comments, which will be occurring over the next several months. So I'm looking to create a little bit of a contingency to make sure we have funds to complete that work. The balance of the budget is probably a little bit confusing the way it's laid out here. I'm not suggesting that we're not going to spend money on some of these small categories like education and office equipment and permits. What I would really like to do, and I was not able to figure out how to do this with the software, but I think it makes sense for us to lump all those line items, starting with advertising, public notice, into one kind of miscellaneous expenses category. We do move money around between those various line items now in the office. We also share some of that, a lot of that work with other departments. So it's not really very useful in tracking, expenditures with regard to these very small line items. And my suggestion is that that all of them be lumped together as a single item. How it's described, I'm not totally sure. Those numbers all add up in the current budget to a little bit less than $8,000. And so my suggestion is that we create a new category and budget that for a similar amount.
Thank you, and thank you for that suggestion on the realignment of the categories. I also just want to acknowledge, thank you, George. What is this, about the 40th budget presentation you made to the Board of Selectmen?
38.
I can't remember, but I did figure out that over the years, I've attended over 750 planning and zoning commission meetings.
Oh, my goodness.
And as we get into the questions, before I forget, George, for those who are not aware, George is retiring at the end of the month, which is why we're out looking for a new planning director. So, George, I just publicly just want to, or not publicly, but within this group, want to acknowledge the contributions you've made. Appreciate the work done. Also, the counsel you provided me in the short time that I've been in this office. So good luck in your retirement. Now
Thank
we
you.
can ask. Now we can ask you some questions.
If I could just
Anybody
add
else?
one thing to that, Mr. First Selectman,
Sure.
I've had the occasion to work with Mr. Crowell professionally over the last, well, longer than I'd care to remember. And it's been a very enjoyable experience, and I wish him the best of luck in his retirement as well.
Thank you, Jeff.
Any questions? Mary Jane, maybe, the code maintenance number there of 10, that's capital?
I've already made a note.
It's already been, okay, good. Well, so then
We'll take care of that.
Right.
And if
And-
we're,
So, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask if we're collapsing those other small items into another category, that means we have an increase somewhere, right? 'Cause these
Yeah.
are all minuses.
Yeah, but if we pull out
Yeah, I
10,000,
specifically had asked
10,000 is
George,
in that $11,000 increase.
yeah, specifically had asked George about those line items, and he's asked to keep them at 0, but I think we just maybe need to do a little work on that. Like he's suggesting, and
Yeah.
wanna look at those line items.
Got it.
But yeah, we're gonna take the 10,000 out, so. We'll
That number
figure out
comes
the
back,
rest,
that number comes way down.
Will it try and go into capital then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's not coming out, it's just moving.
This is the, right,
It's just moving.
well, I'll say my recommendation was just to remove it, it's a contingency. If we need it, we address it at the time.
Time.
That was gonna be my recommendation, but obviously,
Okay,
a conversation as we move forward.
gotcha, thank you.
Any other questions for George?
I was just gonna ask at the total, the bottom, but also, congratulations on the retirement and thank you for the outstanding service for so long.
Thank you.
But I was curious, the total at the bottom says like an $11,000 increase, but maybe that's because of these
It's
items that are, or am I missing something
Yeah,
else
it
here?
includes taking out those items and the addition of the 10,000 for code maintenance.
Yeah,
right?
so it's the 5 plus the 10 minus the others. Hopefully it adds right, or else I got a problem with
It
the
does really.
system.
Yeah, what you need to look at is down the bottom on total, it's the 2022 revised budget versus the department request budget.
250 minus 238.
Okay, I don't know, I saw.
It is
that.
it is
Right.
confusing,
Okay.
Jonathan, I saw it, said.
That's right.
Oh, you know why? The 10,000 isn't showing up
Yeah,
in the
yes,
change.
missing from the column.
Oh,
there.
Yeah, the percentage is not calculated.
right, it's not showing, it's
So
because
out
that line
at the
item is,
bottom,
Yeah.
summary.
yeah, so that's one of the little issues I have, because there wasn't a budget line in the prior year.
Right,
ClearGov isn't
that's
recognizing it.
flexible.
So on the sheets that I gave you, the spreadsheets I gave you for the selectmen to use, I added it, but these I downloaded directly from the system. So yes, Jonathan,
Yeah.
that you have to add, put it,
Oh, and
Pretend there's a
The 10's
$10,000.
Okay, with the total, okay, with the 10 comes
Yes,
out to be.
sorry.
I got it.
thanks, Jonathan. I'm glad you mentioned that, because
The formula is.
It's understandable.
the formula's
The
not.
formula's along the bottom of the summary.
Yes, sorry about that.
All right, anything further for George? Hearing none, George, thank you very much once again.
You.
All right, 11, Health Department. Sonia here? There she is, the hardest working person in Guilford. And I mean that like you can't believe. And I want to take the opportunity, similar to what I just did with George. I can't imagine I can imagine the stress and the pressure Sonia has been under for the entirety of her career here, which is now, what, a year and a half, about a year and a half. Sometimes you get what you ask for. You want a job in the health field, you got one. But just the pace of the work that is going on in the health department with just contact tracing alone, let alone the advising and the running of clinics and running of all kinds of programs at this point. So Sonia, public acknowledgement on the great work you're doing as we try to keep our communities safe. So now to more mundane subjects like our budget.
Thank you very much for those words, kind words, Matt. So I wanted to thank you, Mary Jane and Mitch, because we did get hit pretty hard the last 2 months, and they were very helpful during this budget process for me. And I just wanted to say thank you to them before going into the increases and decreases in my budget. The biggest item here is requesting for our sanitarian to become full-time. It is not because of the COVID, but because of environmental health duties increasing substantially. Kim noted the increase in building, but before it hits building, it has to go through my department first because you have to flush your toilet. So some of the projects that were mentioned before are hitting my office right now and need extensive review. On top of that, it seems like there's permit increases with just with septic work in general, repairs, possibly because people are home, well exceptions, well replacements, that type of thing. Because of that increase in personnel, that's pretty much where a few of the items have increased. For example, expense and travel, we are waiting for our car. We're supposed to be getting it this month, I've been told. So there, I did add an extra $100 into the expense and travel. So for the rest of the items, for the most part, I stayed the same, except for uniform and clothing allowance, because we do have the third sanitarian, and education and training. We're a bit over budget right now, so I'd rather budget for that next year going forward. Training a sanitarian is extensive, and there's not many of us out there anymore. So it's very important for her to get all the training that's necessary, as well as our ongoing training for Shirley and myself. The bigger items, or the most increase that I have, would be for printing and office supplies. And that is directly related to the fact of that we're going to have to send out pump out reminders fairly soon. And so the printing of those pump out notices, as well as the postage, would relate to those cost increase on those line items. And for the rest, have pretty much stayed the same, and a decrease in vehicle maintenance because we are expecting that car next year, or next month. So sorry, next month. And other than that, my budget's pretty simple.
Thank you. Mary Jane, you want to talk a little bit about what we've done with salary line items?
Mitch, did you want to talk about the salary line items, or do you want me?
It's fine. We can do it
I
together.
won't bypass Mitch. He's got, we do it together.
It's all right. We've worked on this together since the beginning. As Sonia mentioned, she is increasing from a part-time to a full-time environmental health technician, which then, as she obviously reduces her part-time number, increases her full-time number. But in discussions with Mary Jane, that cost for this year will be completely offset by ARPA grant funds for this particular budget. She also has a PHP grant in there also that we usually have for the health department, so the $5,000 there. And the rest is pretty much the way it's been. And she's also added the part-time person, Nancy, who's been working with her for quite some time now, but that position has been completely offset by an ELC grant, which if you want to know what that stands for, you have to ask Sonia, as well as her overtime is being offset by the ELC grant. And I think Nancy, basically her main job is to get those grants and to beyond just her own salary, but that keeps the department running right now. Among everybody else there, it's been a real challenge, as Sonia and Matt have both said. But Sonia's done yeoman work and getting grants to keep things going too. Mary Jane, anything to add?
All set, Mitch.
All right. Sonia, I did have a question. A couple of months ago, you and the WPCA folks made a presentation to the Board of Selectmen around the challenges with the communal septic systems and the management of same. You indicated that the state is going to start to pay a little closer attention to some of that stuff. Some of it related to the financial arrangements we have relative to the funding that's supposed to be in place. But there was discussion about potentially an additional burden, because I don't mean to say this, but I have to say it. We might not have paid as close attention to this item as we should have, only owing to a variety of factors. So does this move to the full-time sanitarian give you some bandwidth to do some of that work with those systems?
So a couple things. So I have not been able to meet with the WPCA. On top of being a little bit overwhelmed, we are also extremely short-staffed. So we have not been able to meet. However, looking at some of the stuff in the files, I'm pretty well versed, having worked in almost every single town that are under orders, except for Madison. So I'm familiar with the information that's in the file. I do think that I would like to suggest at least an audit of the file by perhaps a firm or another environmental company. I can absolutely work hand in hand with them because I am very knowledgeable about it. However, devoting a lot of time to it would be very difficult at this time for me. As a sanitarian or even an environmental tech, it's a little higher level, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with just anybody working on it without my direction unless it was an environmental company. But that is something that I do need to speak directly with the WPCA, and I do apologize. It was kind of short. It all kind of happened really quickly, and then guess what? Omicron came in, and I apologize about that.
No apologies necessary. I just wanted to bring that back to the top of mind. And that may well be, as you just suggested, and I think we had that discussion. Did it lend itself to contractor work or a temporary basis until such time as we put a system or systems in place to manage that going forward? So thank you for that suggestion. That's something we'll be discussing at some point. Thank you.
Sonia, this is Sandy. So if the request goes through to take the part-time person to full-time, you will have, I just want to get this clear, you will have, including yourself, there'll be 4 full-time members of the health department?
Yes, full-time administrative assistant, full-time sanitarian, full-time environmental tech, and myself. I do both director of health as well as sanitarian work.
Right, and the reason I'm asking this is COVID, if we take COVID aside, which we all love to do, but it's still here, there were other things, as you just pointed out with this WPCA situation, that we need this kind of a staff going forward. I mean, and this is a question, not a statement. I believe we need this kind of staff going forward to address issues that may not have always been caught up fully in the past or managed fully in the past. Is that a fair question?
That is correct. We have gotten quite a few different things put on to us environmental health wise, not just COVID wise. For example, hotel motels, as well as response to just daycares. Complaints seem to be going higher and higher with population higher, as well as development. Development's a big thing, and we want to make sure that we're doing it environmentally correct, just protecting environmental health as well as working with inland wetlands to make sure that we're protecting the environment for environmental protection purposes. So it is increased, not just from COVID. It is a needed increase for inspections, food. It's all over the board. Increase for everything as well as new stuff that's been placed on my department.
Right. And the environmental tech position didn't exist, right? We just had a health department, whatever you are, the health department czar. Right. And then we had a sanitarian, but the ET position is new. Is that correct?
That is correct, because getting a sanitarian right now is extremely expensive and probably not going to happen. There's so many positions open. So what the purpose of environmental tech was to train them. I've done it several times in my other jobs, trying to get more people into our field. For example, Shirley was my environmental tech in Westbrook, and now she's a registered sanitarian. Tori has worked with us part-time. It does take almost a year full-time to get somebody certified. And I would like to mention John, who is our person who does restaurants right now. He's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. But he's giving us a great deal to say, and we can't always rely on that. So I need to get my inspectors up to food certification, which is a very lengthy process.
Right. Okay, thank you. I know health department director. I just lost the term. I don't know why. Thank you.
I think we like the term czar better.
Okay, or czarina.
I mean, you're right. Any other questions? Sonia, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, item 12. Before we move on, does anyone need a quick, we're good? Okay, excellent. All right, number 12, Board of Selectmen. Karen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'll just hit the highlights for you. The first increase I'll go over is in advertising and public notices. That's basically just due to the continuing increase of publishing our legal notices and public hearing notices in the paper, mostly the Register. It's not unusual these days for us to have a bill of $1,200 or $1,500 to publish one item. increase that you see in office supplies is strictly due to what we're all experiencing when we go to the store, just the increase in the supplies that we need. And just as a reminder, this item covers Town Hall South, Social Services, Youth and Family Services. So many of our departments, their supplies come out of this line item. We did a decrease in education and training only because with COVID, we don't foresee a lot of in-person meetings and training. A lot of them are still virtual. And the other increase was in the municipal historian. Joel once a year purchases archival paper, and with the cost of paper, I just included a $50 increase in the paper that he purchases. Other than that, if there's any questions.
Karen, just one quick point here. I think, and Mitch, you want to address the full-time salaries does not include, is not a final number, right?
Yeah, that's not a final number because the contracts for the individual contributors, CNSU, have not yet been finalized. And so those are still showing the same rates, and I've accounted for that in the reserve for personnel.
Thank you.
Karen, have we ever made any prior, I know it's not your responsibility necessarily, but I know over the years we've talked about the mandates for having these printed advertisements. Is there any progress being made at CCM or anywhere about that, Matt?
Yeah, Charles, on one of the legislative committees, I think it was the administrative law or whatever committee, that is a recommendation, is to get rid of the requirement that it needs to be posted in the paper. That's a CCM position. But as you can well imagine, the newspaper industry lobbies pretty strongly because it's a significant source of revenue for them. So the CCM and cost as well, the other municipal membership organization, Council of Small Towns, they're also pushing that agenda item.
Yeah, it just seems so unreasonable. So many communities are going, digital in so many different ways that, it's an unfortunate situation. So
it really is. And again, quite honestly, I think the industry has had pretty effective lobbying to prevent that from happening. But there is continued pressure on the legislature. And I've had conversations with with all three of our legislators, Vinny, Christine, and Sean, and they're supportive of that initiative, but I'm not sure if they alone can make it happen. So, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. I might have missed this, Karen. I was looking at some other notes I made for a moment, but did you touch on the office supply increase?
Yeah, it's just a general increase in everything. I mean, as I said, I'm sure we've all seen it when we go to the store. There are some supplies that are contractually obligated that we have a contract on, not everything. And just as an example, this morning I had a phone call from another department who went to our current contract vendor, WB Mason, and they don't have the items in stock, asking, can I order elsewhere? So, and that's not unusual. I have several items right now that are on back order and been on back order for weeks, probably a couple of months in some instances. And so sometimes departments are forced to go to another vendor because they need the supplies.
Okay, so that's about a 25% increase you're seeing, just things are getting that much more expensive.
If we didn't have a contract on the cost of paper, the cost of paper is astronomical alone. And that's just one item that we go through a lot of, so.
Yeah, and as Karen says, we go out to bid for office supplies, and if we have to go elsewhere, we're paying plus out retail, as opposed to the favored pricing we get from the contract. So.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird issue, like going across the different departments, but I don't know if I was seeing the same kind of increases across the different departments.
Karen, can you reiterate for Jonathan's benefit, all of the departments that you buy office supplies for again?
Right.
So it's everybody in
I think
town.
he missed that, yeah.
So it's all of Town Hall departments, Town Hall South departments, social services, youth and family services, The ones that I don't order for are the bigger departments, police, fire, public works. The rest of them all come through us.
Okay, I see. So some of those departments look zero or very low, but the cost this year, in the select budget. Okay,
Right. They're all lumped together in our budget.
all right, thanks a lot. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Anything else? Karen, great job as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 13, legal. Counselor, are you on the line? He's there.
I am. Here I am.
Hello, Pete. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let me see what we got here. Okay, so I'll just run through these. You'll see that there's a couple of increases, a couple of deductions. Our net effect is to reduce this budget by about $5,000. I'm going to repeat what Kevin said earlier, fingers crossed about snowstorms. I kind of say the same about litigation and legal needs, so, but I think this is a pretty good estimate. The first is that part-time salaries, that's our in-house assistant, or what we've called assistant in the past, but we have changed that position to, I think we're calling it a purchasing coordinator, which will be interacting more directly with the finance department and with various departments as far as fully implementing and also assisting in training on our purchasing module. That position was obviously paid less when it had less responsibilities. This position will have more responsibilities. And in order to attract a more qualified and competent person there, we are paying that position a little bit more. That position also will not be a union position. We determined that since it is in-house in the Selectmen's office, it has certain confidential components, especially with respect to the work that I do on occasion. And so that's the explanation for that. I'll answer any other questions you may have on that. General legal expense, this is again one of those moving targets year to year. I did feel, and I've discussed all this with Matt, that we could reduce that a bit based upon what I think is a pretty good status right now, at least with respect to litigation that is not funded by our insurance carrier. We're in pretty good shape. But I mean, there are obviously other things other than litigation. There's contracts and so forth. So there's plenty of work, but I do think we can reduce that somewhat. We've kept the stenographer's expense the same. That's really for situations where we need deposition transcripts, or for instance, in a zoning appeal where we're responsible for providing a record. When an appeal goes to Superior Court from zoning, it's based upon the record that was created in the planning and zoning hearing or the zoning board of appeals hearing. That's the only thing the Superior Court judge will be looking at. And so we have to produce that. And there's obviously copying expenses and so forth associated with that. Labor, we use outside counsel for labor. He and I talk often. He talks even more often with Mitch. And I discussed this. I discussed this both with Mitch and Matt, and with our outside counsel, Chris Hodgson, where it looks like we've had, I think, Mitch, great success in resolving a lot of the contracts that were pending. And I know it's not all completed, but I think in this coming fiscal year, I think there'll be less labor work. Judgment and losses, we've just kept that the same. That would be for an unfunded type of litigation that insurance wouldn't cover, and perhaps we could resolve ourselves inexpensively. If it came to that, that would be a matter I would take up with Matt, and we would bring it to the board. Assessment and reval claims. All right, so here, and I've had a nice interaction with the attorney's office at Halloran and Sage that principally does our a lot of our assessment and reval appeals. We are having a reval. It'll be effective October of 2022, as you folks all know. That inevitably triggers more appeals. There will be some additional work within the 2022-2023 year related to that. The bulk of it will probably be in the subsequent year when depositions are conducted in court hearings. But we did think that it warranted an increase in our current number from, let's make sure I'm reading the right line, 50 to 55,000. So that's where one of the other increases is. General zoning matters. You heard from George that there's a rewrite, a complete rewrite of our zoning regs. We do have zoning counsel Chuck Andrus, you may have heard that name before, has been doing the zoning work, that direct zoning work in the town for many years over the course of many administrations. And so he's engaged when needed in the rewrite. And he is also handling zoning appeals. We have two substantial ones right now that he's handling. That, in my view, between those three things, the two rather expensive appeals and the zoning rewrite, is going to require a little more expenditure in the coming year. Contracted services, we've kept the same. That's my in-house legal services. Permits, dues, subscriptions is the same, and education and training is the same. Education and training is not for me, it's for this new position. We expect that that person will be engaged in more high-end type of training for that position. Well, that's my review. I'm willing to certainly answer any questions you may have.
Pete, thank you very much. I just want to talk to the assessment reval claims. I know you and Mary Jane did a lot of work together to look at the classic 5-year cycle with reval. And some of you probably recall a couple of years ago, our legal bills spiked dramatically the first full year after a reval goes into effect. So this is sort of, this year is almost at the tail end of the curve that we're in right now. So a little bit of increase, and we looked at a couple of cycles, 2 5-year cycles, and it's pretty consistent in terms of percentage increases. I don't know if Mary Jane wants to comment or not, but.
No, the only thing I would add is that we do have some funding in fund balance for revaluation, that if for some reason we had a huge claim that, required a larger expense that we could also tap into as well. We had put money aside in that fund balance specifically for the contract for the revaluation company based on our estimates, but then we saved some money. The actual contract was less. So there is a small balance in there that could cover anything that might, be off the curve.
Right. And this year, this reval, we are assuming that property values are going to increase. I've been keeping a spreadsheet of real estate transactions that over the past 10 months, I think it is, and I have about 330 entries on my spreadsheet. The average sales price for a home is 35% higher than the appraised price, that our appraisal, and let alone the assessed price. So the market has, the market based on sales data suggests that there will be a significant jump in the, in property values. The more, the cycles, I've been doing this for longer than I care to remember, but the cycles are traditionally when there's a reval where property values increase, we get more appeals. When there's a cycle where we are either flat or a decrease in property values, we get less appeals. It's been a rare occasion where somebody's come into the zoning board of appeals and said, I would like to pay more taxes. Can you raise my assessment? That just doesn't happen. So I think this is one of those cycles where we're probably going to see an increased demand and between the reserve account and the additional here on the first year, I think we're okay.
Matt, the only point I would make on that would be at the tail end of the last reval, I know we took a harder look at the cost benefit analysis of pursuing some of the situations and maybe, see how it goes, but take a look at that situation earlier rather than spend a lot of time and effort on something that's a marginal situation. So that would be my only suggestion.
Thank you. And that is part of the normal process with the assessor's office, our outside counsel, and in determining whether or not the marginal difference between our number and their number is worth even going to court over. And most of these are settled, even the disagreements between once they're filed. Most of them get settled without having to go to court case, and that's after they've not gotten satisfactory answers from the zoning board of appeals. But you're right, Charles. There is a cost benefit analysis on that. So,
Is there a potential to have that some ARP money cover that because the real estate markets are driven up by COVID?
It's worth a question, Jonathan. I'll ask the respective advisors that we're using on that. Again, that's a good question. It's an interesting question. So, Mitch.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Pete, for the budget analysis there. And I don't know if you've budgeted at all for potential arbitration in that budget or not, but I've gotten breaking news this morning that the firefighters have approved our contract after we went through mediation on that, and we were able to mediate the contract with avoiding going to arbitration, which would have been very expensive. And I expect that contract to come before the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting on February 7th. So good news. Thanks, Charles, for being involved with that
Yeah, I was
too.
going to say, Charles, thank you very much for being the Board of Selectmen representative on that the negotiating committee. Well done. So that means we'll be able to adjust the fire department budget to actually show their salary.
More work to do, right?
More work for us.
Yeah, more work, but, and we can take this offline, but what I'm concerned about is once we plug in those numbers, we're gonna see a huge increase. We're gonna see 2 years worth of increase in there. So if need be.
But we will adjust this year's budget as well. So the year over year.
The year over year,
Yeah,
that's exactly what I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, just like we've already adjusted, some of the other budgets.
Thank you. Thank
you.
All right, any other questions on legal?
I guess just one quick one. Do you happen to know how much surplus is in that account for the contract for the reevaluation?
If you give me a minute, I can look it
If
up.
not, just curious, if we've got a little
We do.
money available.
Yeah, hold on just a moment.
While Mary Jane's looking that up, there is one point I want to make sure people understand. When we do the grand list, we accommodate a certain percentage of cases that have gone to, that have been appealed as losing them. We do a write down on the grand list that, and Mary Jane has a function that she uses that says, okay, we've got this amount of claims in there. This is the difference between us and the plaintiff. And then we take a write down for a portion of that off the grand list, anticipating we're gonna settle and or lose some of them, so.
Yeah, I make an assumption that we're gonna meet halfway on all claims. So, you know, balances out, so we do take that adjustment, and I have a note on my desk to start working on that already, because we'll be working on budgets, shortly after this. I have Jonathan's answer,
Oh,
$100,887.
We've got a pretty good cushion. Now, the anticipation is we're leaving that there because we'll have another
For the
reval
next
cycle
reval,
5 years.
correct, it will always be for reval use. But
Which-
if the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, because it would have to go to both, would have to approve money coming out of there, but I think the argument could be made to pay for a legal assessment battle over reval if necessary.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't, I don't know if it makes any interest, but it might be better to put it to work right away than have it sit for 5 years. No interest.
Well, typically, we have funded the reval effort, either on an annualized basis or a couple of years ago, we did a one-time transfer fee amount. So what this does is, if we leave that money there, it helps us. It's the first of the 5 payments we would make to be able to pay for the reval
Oh,
5
I
years
see.
from
If we
now.
spread it out over 5 years.
Yeah, that's,
And we are getting interest on it, it's all part of our
Fund
accounts
balance.
that, so
Okay,
the interest doesn't go into that particular line item, but it does come
okay,
into
so
the
either
township.
way, it'll go to the benefit of
Correct.
the next reevaluation expense.
all right. Anything further for legal? No? Pete, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
So. All right, item 14, human resources.
Good morning again. Um,
It's almost afternoon, isn't it?
Human resources, the salaries for myself and Jessica right now are holding steady for the simple reason that those contracts, mine and hers, have not yet been resolved. Now that all the collective bargaining agreements have been taken care of, I'm expecting that shortly we'll be able to take care of the confidential non-supervisors, and then mine traditionally goes last after everyone else is settled. So, but hopefully we get those, and we may be able to make adjustments with this as well in the near future. If not, it's accounted for and reserved for personnel. The expenses, let's see, going down my budget, the expenses and travel would remain the same for next year. Printing, I've increased slightly because our printing costs have started to go up, and that mostly has to do with the labor posters that we have to get printed on the outside that Jessica orders. The office supplies also, as Karen mentioned before, showing a small increase there as well. The permits, dues, subscriptions continue to rise. Not significantly, but enough so that I need to make an adjustment for that part of the budget. And then education and training, I was actually able to reduce a little bit. Some of the education for this year most of the education for this year has been online, which has cost substantially less. I expect next year to roll in some of the things will be online, but mostly will be expected to be back in person. But we'll see. So that's HR. Is there any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Hi, so Mitch.
Hi, Sandy.
Hi, so your salary is up for review this year or next year?
Well,
I mean, in
both. My contract expired at the end of this past June, as did other contracts, as did all the CNSU people. And so those are being worked on presently with myself and Matt. And once those are resolved, we'll just tie up my contract with Matt. And I'm not sure if that even may come to the Board of Selectmen as well. I'm not sure. And we'll go from there.
But if there are increases, they're in the reserve for personnel?
Yes, they are. Yes.
Oh, I guess that was my question.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. That's covered.
That's okay.
That was settled. It is consistent with the other contracts that have been reached with Guilford Supervisors Union and a variety of our unions at this point, so.
It's 0, right, Mitch?
Just like yours, Mary Jane.
Mine's not under review.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Does the town have enough money for that reserve amount?
Yeah.
Just enough.
Anything else for human resources? All right, hearing none. Let's segue into employee benefits, Mitch.
Yep. So the very first thing in employee benefits, segueing right in, is the reserve personnel, which we've talked about several times in the last 2 days, projected for $220,000. And that's mostly because it seems high. And it's mostly because we're looking at 2 years of arrears for the fire department, which is the major part of that. And as we said before, we'll maybe be able to take that out, seeing what Mary Jane and I can do in the next several weeks. Next up is our retirement plans, otherwise known as pension for most. We're actually looking at a decrease here, which we're happy to report. Most of that is coming from a meeting that was held yesterday with our actuary from Milliman, showing that even by reducing our assumption rate on our pension plans from 6% to 5.75%, we are still going to be able to save about $100,000 in our pension plans for next year over all 3 pension plans. And obviously 2 of them are covered here. The third is the Board of Ed. And it's really exciting news because, as I said yesterday, having listened to actuaries many times over many years, this is the first time I've ever seen the ability to lower your assumption rate and still save money over the previous year. So I applaud the pension committee for recommending to the Board of Selectmen that that rate be dropped, which will be proved to be very advantageous to the town for many years to come. So I think that's a great move that hopefully will be accepted. It says pension here, but it really is all the retirement plans. It includes our contribution to the Teamsters plan. It also includes what's another part that's actually going up expectedly is the contributions that are being made to the defined contribution plan, the match that the town puts in to our employees. That goes up based on the number of employees entering the defined contribution plan, as well as their salaries go up, so does the part of our match. Heart and hypertension is a reserve fund that's been the same for many years. The retirement benefits is specific to 2 people that have been there for many years unchanged. The FICA, Mary Jane has put together based on all those salary increases that you've seen across the board, and we're looking at an increase, about 7% increase in our FICA. Unemployment, I expect to drop for next year. It's dropping now. I'm a little bit, we might be able to drop this a little bit more. We'll take a look at it. We were hit pretty hard on unemployment based on COVID because so many people who had served the town as part-time workers were receiving substantial, as everyone knows, unemployment compensation benefits for some time, which is now waned to the point where I think we're going to get that back to a steady level. Retirement sick leave. This is contractual for several of the individuals who are mostly been here for a long time. And we have put away over the years money on that account that Mary Jane has in a accrued account. So we're going to try to reduce the amount here to a steady $50,000 a year over the next several years. And we think we can be able to make this work on a steadier basis than going up and down each year and what we have to put away for retirement sick leave, as some of those people actually retire and have sick time that is accrued and per their contracts is paid out. Medical insurance, I don't know, we can discuss this in more detail. We are going to see, well, we're expecting to see some substantial increases in our medical insurance that Mary Jane and I can talk further about. We're not happy about it. We're going to be doing some looking to see if there's ways that we can reduce these costs, but for right now, we're looking at an overall 21% increase in our medical insurance. The OPEB trust contribution is new, but I think everyone in this call is aware of the OPEB needs and desires and recommendations that have come down, and we're proposing $18,000 into the OPEB. Life insurance, a benefit provided to all of our full-time employees. This is going up slightly just because of the number of employees has gone up slightly over the last 2 years. Some of it's just catching up. So that's why it's a little bit more than just the one new full-time employee that you've seen in this year's budget. Employee assistance program, that is going up by the one employee. We pay for full-time employees for employee assistance program. It's $21.95 a person per state contract with EAP, which has been regarded by many people as very, very helpful to them in many situations, different situations, lifetime issues. So that goes up very slightly to $23.49 for the year. The long-term disability insurance is contractual with our police and our fire. That is for those individuals who are not on the traditional pension plan. We have a long-term disability insurance for those individuals, and that's going to continue to increase each year as more and more people once again move to a defined contribution plan, as well as salary. It's also dictated by salaries as well. And then the offset for the waste transfer station reimbursement at $113,000 is Mary Jane has figured out based on workers' comp and everything else that goes into that. So questions, I know I've run through that, but I know there may be some questions. We can dig deeper on any of the areas. I don't know if Mary Jane wanted to
Mary
comment
Jane,
on
yeah,
things.
please.
Yeah, I have three items that I just wanted to comment on. If you look at the FICA budget and it's showing a 7% increase, that doesn't mean, you'll see our salaries aren't necessarily going up by that, but we have to add back in all of those grants that we're covering for employees, and not all of our grants cover benefits. So, so that number might be a little bit high based on that, because we might be able to juggle some of those grants. But if we hire an employee and we pay their salary by a grant, sometimes we're still on the hook for the benefits. So that's why that number may look higher to you than you would have expected. So I just wanted to explain that.
Can I just follow up on that
Yep.
too? And is it my understanding, am I correct in understanding that when we put the FICA budgets together for next year, and we had proposed additional salaries or additional positions in there, we do not include the FICA until such time as the budget passes?
No, we budget the FICA based on exactly what we budget.
Okay,
So-
based on those new
based-
bodies being there.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
just want to make sure.
My second comment is regarding the medical. We can talk more about that, although I just wanted to say that our consultant, Joe Spurgeon, Lindbergh and Ripple, gave a very comprehensive presentation to the Board of Ed Operations Committee the other night. Many of our Board of Finance members were in attendance and were able to hear that presentation. I have spoken to Mr. Spurgeon. We will be bringing him back in to give that same presentation at a Board of Selectmen's meeting very soon. Anyone who's missed that presentation or would like to see it again, if you want to, we'll make sure everybody knows, but I just wanted to bring that forward. And my last comment is regarding the OPEB trust contribution, which I know you don't want to hear from me about OPEB because I talk enough, but I just wanted to say that that was the first year of a 5-year ramping in of that. So once our 5 years, the Board of Ed has a similar, their number's a little higher than ours, but they are doing the same thing. They have budgeted for their first year, the 5-year ramping in, and this is our first year. So
Mary Jane or Mitch, could you talk to the one last point on the medical that we are going out to bid on? Mitch, Mitch, we're going out.
We are looking to go out to bid both. Potentially, we're looking at the Anthem costs and whether we can do something by going out for a new proposal, which could either change our carrier or certainly talk to them very seriously about our need to do what we can, and also on the stop loss as well. There's been some issues with the stop loss that we're trying to deal with, and not happy, I guess is the best way to put it, at the moment with the way we are being treated by Anthem. Now, Mary Jane, want to add to that at all?
I just want to say Anthem is changing the way they're billing us for stop loss, which is causing this angst with us. And so that's why we had decided, even before we decided to go out to bid for all the insurance, we had immediately made the decision to go out to bid for at least stop loss.
A couple of points to be made here. One, changing carriers is somewhat of a challenge relative to our union negotiations. I think we've alerted all of our unions that we're looking to change, but then we're going out to bid, that we may change carrier. The stop loss is completely at our discretion. That doesn't impact our relationship with the unions. I did have a question, Mary Jane and or Mitch. Does the number we show here, which is obviously a 22% increase, does that include the possibility of the lasering and assuming the risk for those employees that are in the stop loss category that they've targeted?
Are you talking about the potential of the 600,000?
Yeah.
The 600, one of the decisions we made was to pull out two members from the stop loss and take the potential of their stop loss, which is approximately 600,000 for the two, to cover that if needed through the medical fund balance and not to budget for it. So this number does not include those two.
Those two, okay. Good. So what we're doing here is we're saying that we're taking some risk with our assumption that they will not be covered by the stop loss. We'll pick up if they get to that stop loss, which is often unlikely because of the nature of those illnesses that the individuals who are at those thresholds of incurring the same kind of cost. But they, if it winds up being a shortage in the account, we would use, but not even a shortage, we could use fund balance money to cover the excess costs. And that's, I think, a totally appropriate use of that fund balance. It is not, we are not immediately budgeting for it because we don't know how much it is. But it will get used to offset some of those costs.
It was a recommendation of our consultant. We've had extensive conversations regarding that.
Right, and the Board of Finance had the luxury of sitting through that extensive presentation the other night, and has been fully advised of it. That's why we want to bring Joe Spurgeon in for our board to get the same kind of level of
Right, so
understanding.
I'll be having him come in one of our budget meetings that we're having at the end of the month.
I did want to comment on this briefly. I brought up over the years, and I've had some confusion a little bit about how we're getting all these assumptions, but I brought up over the years that we've over budgeted for medical pretty dramatically in some years. And I've also, brought up that the stop loss hasn't been working on quite a few of the last couple of years to our benefit. So I'm wondering, is this bid process, do you think this is going to help us? I mean, there's no crystal ball, but is this going to help us get maybe like to a better number and a little more accurate budget of medical?
That's exactly the objective here, is to get some benefit out of doing this. Unfortunately, I think the industry tends to move as a herd, and this particular focus on this lasering, which is targeting high value or high cost accounts and adjusting the stop loss for those specific individuals, is something that apparently is happening throughout the industry. But not everybody is applying it, which is why we're going out to bid. Originally, we were just going to go out to bid for the stop loss because we think that it's outrageous the way they're increasing our fees based on a couple of individuals. So the short answer is yes.
All right.
That would be the goal.
We'll zero in on
That would be the
more
goal.
accurate figure.
And I think Joe Spurgeon does speak well about that same issue during his presentation, so hopefully you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, I'll try to catch the next one.
Yeah, well, let's make sure Jonathan knows
Okay,
when that presentation is just for the.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier even, yeah.
Any other comments or questions? All right. We're good. Thank you. All right, Mitch, let's stay with you.
You know, can I ask one?
Letter here.
All right.
Sure.
One more.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mitch, maybe one quick one.
Yes,
I
Jonathan.
don't remember a lot of the details of hypertension and some of the reasons why we were storing that up, but I think, you know, we were having issues, especially with some of the firefighters, and we wanted a fund to cover those costs if that occurred. But wasn't that something that was going to expire at some point?
It actually has expired many years ago, but there are a certain number of firefighter and police officers that are grandfathered under that. Our exposure recently has not been that great. We have had some large expenditures in the past. But it's a good point that we should look at that going forward to see at some point, you know, we still have some senior officers that are, like I say, grandfathered under that, but at some point that should be able to be phased out or phased downward. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, obviously we want to cover people that are affected, but I'm just wondering if it's going to trail off at some point.
At some point, I believe it will. Not yet, but at some point it will.
Traditional mortality tables will make sure that.
Oh, right, of course.
Fortunate. Okay, Mitch, insurance.
All right, insurance. So our workers' comp continues on an upward trend, but we have a pretty much a 5% lock on that, although this is another area, both our workers' comp and the next item, LAP, they're currently with Kerma. We're going to be taking a strong, hard look at that as well as our medical insurance this year. Our consultant on that feels it's time to test the waters on our costs that have continued to go up for workers' comp and LAP. So we're going to look at that. But I think right now he is told us we should figure on a 5% increase on both the workers' comp and the LAP. So I've put in close to that, looking at more, the LAP's a little bit less because I looked at the actuals and could reduce that a little bit. So the comp is up by 36,000, the LAP is up by 15,000. We have seen larger increases in the past, but it's still, you know, reaching a point where it's really gotten, you know, very, very high overall. And this affects both the town and the Board of Ed. So any changes would be in concert with both sides on that. Our crime fiduciary liability, the crime policy has taken an upward tick, but the bigger area here is our fiduciary liability. Over the last several years, our pension funds, mostly due to the market, as well as obviously the investments that have been made by the pension committee and our consultant, have risen pretty dramatically, which is great news, which is also one of the big reasons why that actuarial valuation has allowed us to reduce costs for next year. However, our fiduciary liability is based on the size of our assets. And so that has been rising somewhat as well over the last couple of years. And I got to kind of catch up with that. So we're seeing about a 10% increase in this particular line, both because of the crime policy and the fiduciary liability policy that goes there. The next one is more dramatic. The miscellaneous insurance, we've had a couple of things happen in the past year. Last year, I asked you to budget for both cyber liability as well as active assailant liability. After extensive discussions with our consultant, we decided not to go forward with the active assailant policy, liability policy. It's a calculated decision there, but we did go forward with the cyber liability, which came out to not only be expensive this year, the projection for next year is even much more so. Cyber liability costs have risen dramatically, as will the insurance for them. And that's mostly what's driving this, as well as we discovered, or Kerma discovered kind of by accident last year, that we were uninsured for flood insurance down by Public Works. And we had to put in a flood insurance policy because the Public Works area, or part of the Public Works area, is in a flood zone that had not been discovered previously. And therefore we had to scramble to pay for a flood insurance policy this year, and obviously that was not in the budget. So we've got a budget for it next year, which is why you're seeing such an increase in this particular line item. All those reasons together. The offset for waste transfer station reimbursement is based on Mary Jane's projections and what she puts together there. Same thing with library. The claim deductibles should be about the same. We've budgeted the same there each year, and it's pretty much kept us in check. Our insurance consultant at $10,000, by the way, is a bargain, has not gone up for several years and will stay the same. And the police outside reimbursements, also Mary Jane function to help me out with that. And Kerma, being with Kerma, if we stay with Kerma, obviously, we would be getting this distribution, equity distribution each year. It has risen, and we put together an average, if you will, $75,000 projection for a Kerma distribution this coming year. So that is the overall insurance budget, and I welcome any questions.
Anybody?
Which line is the cyber security insurance in? Is it crime?
Or the miscellaneous insurance.
Oh, miscellaneous, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the increase is because of the flood insurance, right?
And, yeah.
The flood insurance hit us hard there too. It's a
And
big-
the increase
the two of them.
Any other questions on the insurance lines? Mitch, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.
17, Tony, information systems. In person, on this side, oh, the other side.
That's it.
Oh,
Sorry,
that's all right.
it's okay.
I can't look at Mitch's pretty face.
No, he doesn't know he's there. Whoever's talking, we see on the screen in front of us over here, so we have Mitch in a big screen over here.
Huge face.
Does IT get hypertension now?
There we go.
Yeah,
There you go,
it's like
Mitch.
he get hypertension, yeah.
They probably.
Oh, you moved it.
These days.
He muted himself.
All right. Ready?
Ready.
I'm going to start off at the top and just talk quickly about Jeremy. I want to thank everybody for letting me get a new employee. He's working out great. It's been about 6 months.
We love him. Everybody loves him.
Yes,
He's
getting
a-
good, getting good comment,
absolute fabulous
getting good
addition.
comments with him. Not much has changed with all the town-wide area network stuff. That's the same. I'm gonna shorten this presentation and really talk about anything new that's in the licensing and maintenance renewals. But if you have any questions, feel free. Well, this is not new, but I'm going to talk about it. Connecticut Computer Service has gone up quite a bit due to all this COVID stuff. I think Microsoft increased some of their fees, so that's why there's a little bit of a increase there. ClearGov. The 21.5 is because of the added what is it?
Right, so we've had ClearGov for a couple of years now with our transparency platform.
But
This
there's-
year, we first added the capital budgeting, had such great success with that, we added the operational budgeting. So this is the full cost of all of the services from them for the next.
But that's going to go down after that, right?
No,
You
this
said
is-
something is, oh, that's everything is in there?
Everything is in there. Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the, I thought,
I don't think it should go down.
what was the surveys is Zen City?
That we didn't budget for surveys.
Oh, okay.
We didn't budget for that at all because that was a one-time special.
All right. So Zen City, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not good on these two because.
Right,
So yeah, you guys, Zen City,
Actually,
Zen City,
I think the board is pretty familiar with it.
yeah, we had that, you had that presentation. That's to get a lot of the demographics, I believe, right, of what's going on.
Social, it's a,
Yeah.
downgrade social.
Social media, see what's going on there.
And conduct surveys.
Zoom is in there now. That's 30, that's the renewal of all this. That is not, the community center is not in there at all yet.
Oh, we should make sure that's included.
So, well, I believe we already, I think we could wait.
Is there an enterprise license or what?
No, because I didn't put, yeah, so all this would still work there. But I didn't put a Zoom room there yet. It's not technically needed. So this would cover all that. The webinar is in there if you ever wanted to use that. Yeah, so we should be good with that. So the Cisco Duo, that's related to Mitch's cybersecurity. And his policy. That's the renewal. I believe we have the money to go forward now with that, so I will be getting that in place within a month.
Yeah, that needs to go in now.
Yeah,
Our insurance is requiring that goes in right now, so.
so I already have all that scheduled with a Connecticut computer to get that all going. And then Revise will be our new renewal with our new website from them. And I just actually got that 3,900 from them. Actually, that won't be renewed for a while, like in 2023 probably, but it would need to be in there. Everything else pretty much the same. Nothing new as far as education. All that is all the same as last year. What I do want to talk about is archival of all HR's documents that we probably.
Let's ask if there's any questions on this.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, any questions on the licensing?
I have a sort of a general question, and that is that it seems like we probably had to do a lot of IT work to virtualize our meetings. And is that going to be covered by some ARP money? And is that maybe temporary? Will we hopefully get back to in-person meetings and not be running?
You mean like Zoom and all that?
Yeah.
Well,
We built out this.
like
room.
hybrid.
We built out this room. We built out the community center room with CARES Act money.
Yeah,
Okay,
so the
so
costs are
already from some.
right, these would be the ongoing licensing.
Is
to
that still a
continue.
possibility though for our?
It's a good question. We'll query the CCM and our Rose's office in terms of the applicability for payment for it. To the second question, I think the ability to engage the community suggests that we probably should be able to work in a hybrid mode for some time to come. And if not hybrid, at least the ability to simulcast or whatever.
Right. Webinar or whatever.
Yeah, broadcast meetings so people can watch them live. So we've made those investments over at the community center
And I have a side note for the community center. Also, the public can come in and use that room for yoga, what they want to broadcast it out.
It'll be used.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, not just,
The virtual.
yeah, not just a meeting.
Okay, for various.
The equipment, yep. Yep.
I guess another side note would be, does this kind of impact Guilford TV in a lot of respects? Because we used to reach out to the community by having them film us.
We're including
Oh,
them.
yeah, we're including, we're trying to find relevance for them in the new world. And actually, we had Shannon in at the department head meeting, the January department head meeting, to talk about what they're trying to do with their strategic plan. And I think, simulcasting, I think, is probably a role for them. The days of filming with this equipment and then sneaker netting it over to another building just don't make sense. So they are in the midst of strategic planning and also investing to see how they can continue to be relevant. Because more people are watching their stuff on YouTube than they watch on the GCTV
Their
station.
phone, yeah.
I 6 months ago, I changed the cable providers. I don't even know where GCTV is on on that. They haven't even looked at it. So, but when I need to see something on GCTV programming, I go to YouTube.
I could tell you quickly about a piece of hardware that we bought in the rack there that does associate with integrating with GCTV, where it will record whatever you're having there, meeting or whatever, and stream it to their hardware so they can either broadcast it or put it on their YouTube channel.
So,
Yeah, we're
right,
working to
there's
try.
possibilities there then, right?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of like the vendor that puts it out for us, yeah, so to
So
speak, yeah.
become like sort of a distributor
Correct.
for us on YouTube.
Right.
A long story short, yes, they're included.
All right, I got,
Although there are some requirements for us to maintain electronic copies of these meetings, and that's a question, a longer term question in terms of storage.
Yeah, we've been getting by with what we've purchased by taking it off of Zoom
Right.
and putting it on my local hard drives.
Yeah.
so I apologize, another general question because I really haven't dug into the details, but are there some software items where they're having increases, but there's some chance to bid out or some alternative or?
They're not really that high though.
Actually,
That's good.
Thanks for that question, because that was a note I just made. And this is based on a conversation that Tony and I had earlier this week about our vendor, Connecticut Computer Services. I think we're in the last year of our agreement with them. Is that what you said?
Oh, it's been 5? No. Are we really?
No.
Maybe.
It's getting close.
It's either 1 or 2.
Yeah,
It's
there's gotta be at least one or two, because
And that's,
been here 5,
but
so.
you know the game. You gotta buy Microsoft licenses. Microsoft doesn't make deals with you. If you're running Outlook, you gotta buy Microsoft.
The deals come to the libraries and the Board of Education.
Definitely some degree of monopoly power there.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
open office, which is kind of interesting, but that's only goes so far, it doesn't create an exchange server for you for email, but.
Right, and then the licensing, a little quick, how it works is the licensing for Microsoft, you pay this one price and it works down to everything. It licenses our mail server, all our other servers that are throughout the town. So, yeah, they got us.
So, just a general worry too, we take on a new software package and then it's, becomes hard to get rid of it, right? We always.
Yeah, I think that's.
With everything, yeah.
Yeah, that's the march of technology. There are things that we are no longer paying for because we no longer use those services. They've been replaced by more sophisticated and better systems.
A lot of cloud-based, everything's cloud-based, board pack, all that.
It's Bill Gates was brilliant. He built out something called the subscription model for services, and you pay every year, and that's the industry model. Now, as you probably know, there's some free software out there.
Oh, yeah.
Shareware or whatever they call it.
I've tried a lot of them.
Yeah.
Kids these days in school, they're all using the Google. They don't even know what Microsoft is. I hate to say it. Then they get to a company and they don't know Office. They don't know Microsoft Office. They use Google Docs, Google Sheets, Gmail, all.
So let me, I guess, pose some kind of like this kind of scenario, like if we weren't doing Zoom meetings because, we're back to in-person meetings, then would that relieve us of, we didn't create a video of the meeting, which I assume we didn't do in the past, although GCTV did. So then we would just store our notes that are taken by our secretary, I think, as we had in the past. And it does seem a little primitive, right? You're like, oh, the video is so powerful. But then at the same time, from a cost standpoint, you might be like, what? It does end up really avoiding huge storage servers and this lifetime commitment to keeping these videos.
We're paying the minimal, believe
I
it.
was gonna say,
We're paying very low for
one of the things
storage.
that's happened in the industry is storage is cheap. It's very inexpensive. It's not what it used to be.
Right.
There are a bunch of players in that marketplace, including AWS and and all the cloud-based providers. So that has driven that industry margins down to next to nothing. So, but you're right. It is an incremental cost. The thing I think that we have the opportunity to do with Zoom meetings is to better engage the community. And
That's, yeah.
get more people involved, get more people to participate. You know, we still haven't seen the evidence of it at Board of Selectmen meetings, except there have been a couple where we've had many more people than we would normally get to a meeting. And, you know, I think you guys saw at the Board of Finance, the hearings over the last couple of last year, a significant number of folks who participated remotely during the budget time. Actually, the last 2 years, right? And this would be the third year that we've done this remotely, right?
Mhm.
Unbelievable.
That's a lot of benefit for the staff.
I was just gonna, thank
You
you.
know, huge time savings.
You know, today is
It
a
is,
prime
yeah.
example, you know, we all anticipated having this storm this morning. We said, okay, everybody take your laptops home because it's still expected to come to this meeting today. We do have some of our employees from home that might not have been able to participate. And, you know, just the advantage of, I'm only down the hall, but you know, when I'm at my desk and I have all of my stuff with
All
me
your
and you
stuff.
ask a question,
Yes.
you've,
so
I think you
productive.
yourself have said that at meetings, that it's so advantageous just to have that technology capability that I would argue strongly against eliminating that.
And let's not forget something. There's been a seismic shift in the way people meet and congregate. And it's not just here in town.
Oh, yeah, it's
It's
all
outside of town. It's the meetings, it's the seminars, it's things that we all used to drive to participate in meetings, all right? It's all being done now remotely, and this has changed the face of way people interact in business. And I dare say it's going to continue to exist for quite some time because it's more efficient, it reduces travel time. And somebody finally figured out the old video conferencing, which was a 386, baud.
Right.
Where every time somebody
shopping.
Yeah, it was shopping. This stuff works amazingly well and easily. And the fact of the matter is, unlike the old video conferencing stuff, all you need is this. You don't need a modem and a separate line. All you need is the stuff you already have in play, which is an internet connection and a device. You know, I've attended Zoom meetings off of this.
Right.
Sitting in my car with this on a dash, not driving.
I was almost gonna say.
Matt? Yeah, and also let me add that we have had some interviews through Zoom, and especially when we've had a couple of long distance applicants, it's made it easier on both of us to have them on Zoom for a preliminary interview, and that's worked out well as well, right in that room.
As word processing got introduced into the world, somebody said, "Oh, is this stuff going to last? We really going to need this?" Well,
I can tell you it changes every 3-4 months. Something's different.
I.M. Wang brought the first word processors in, and he was supplanted by Bill Gates and the Microsoft people. So this is all going to continue to evolve. So I don't mean to pontificate. But.
So this may be a little bit of a tangent question. I don't want to end up in the jail, but I was wondering, what about when we go into executive session? Because during a public meeting, I guess it could be argued that, hey, anybody can dial in and you don't have to vet them to make sure they're able to attend the meeting. But how about executive session? Do we sort of shut down Zoom? Or?
Shut it right
Or
down.
you probably just mute it, right?
No, shut it right
Oh, you just shut it off?
Shut it down.
I didn't know how that
Yeah,
worked.
because,
We just
They figured all that out already.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll give you an example. As you may know, I'm on the board of directors of Tweed New Haven. We had our meeting yesterday afternoon, which required an executive session. So we started the regular meeting on Zoom, right? When we went to executive session, everybody logged off of Zoom, went to Microsoft Teams, because we had a separate meeting set up for the executive session in Microsoft Teams. We closed that, logged back into the Zoom meeting.
And Microsoft Teams.
But somebody's got to keep that meeting
And
open.
I think on Zoom, you could do like breakout rooms.
Right. Breakout.
They call it breakout on Zoom.
So I also am curious too, when it's public, I mean, I don't know if our meetings are important, but is the Politburo watching us or is the CCP watching our meeting? I know that's a little crazy, of course, they're probably not interested in our town level meeting, but you kind of wonder who might join a meeting.
Yeah, well, that's early on. That was a challenge with Zoom bombing meetings and so forth, and there were.
Has it gotten better?
They
It's
got
gotta be
tired
a-
of it.
Probably, yes.
And, it's a lot easier for someone to disrupt or come in and be inappropriate, there's no question about it.
But they could do that live now.
They can do it.
They could do it live.
You're right. You're right. All right, anything further on that? Thank you, good discussion.
All right, hold
Yeah, go ahead.
on. HR. We were gonna put
This
some,
is outside of the.
this is outside. It probably should have been in capital. I thought about it after. I would like to get all Mitch's employee inactive and active archived, and then I can import them into Munis. And they could start getting rid of that stuff. We already talked to the state library. They said if we have it on hard drive and in Munis, paper is not needed. Or move them.
That's a dramatic shift in policy because of the stuff over in town.
Because we'll have it in two spots.
All south.
Yeah, theirs is different. I looked theirs up.
Okay.
It's different.
I just had this discussion related to purchase orders because we now email them.
Yeah.
And I learned just yesterday that exactly what he said. So it is a new shift. So this is something, we could. For capital, but we could add it to the capital request, but we could also use technology money for it. So it would go in and come out.
Go in and come out.
But when we'd like to,
I think it would really streamline things and make things
Why don't we talk
easy.
about it when we address capital?
correct, and so I'd just like to also add that the Board of Ed contacted me wanting to implement employee self-service. And as you
Okay.
know, I've had that conversation with you guys. We have two other large endeavors going on between the permitting and the billing, and
We didn't
the
want
purchasing.
to.
That I was trying to hold off, but because the Board of Ed was looking to implement it, I did agree that the town would also do it at the same time. We can share training, we can share knowledge, we can share all of that. So this will only tie into that, where, all the information would be available, and so we're, after February, the Board of Ed and I will be working to put that forward too. So it all ties in.
On top of a Munis upgrade,
On
man,
top of
just trying
everything,
to, a
but
lot going on.
It was hard. It
You
was
doubled
hard.
your staff, you got plenty of capacity.
But if we do it together with the Board of Ed, it's only
double the
gonna
work.
share resources and.
Well, and the Board of Ed has some pretty substantial technology resources, right?
So I just throw that out as well.
That's sort of a lead-in. I wanted to ask this, and I do bring it up year after year, and the town had like an efficiency committee meet, and it was probably over a decade ago at this point. But one of the recommendations I always keep dragging out of the bin is that they said, why don't the BOE and the town work together in terms of IT? And I know we've talked about it, it's bounced back and forth, but have we ever gotten anything established? Do they back you up? Do you have any kind of
There's really
coordination, help with them, back and forth maybe?
bounce ideas off, yes. But because of they're in education, they do things, they have and do things differently. Like I said, they use Chromebooks, they use Google for the kids, this and that. How do I want to say this?
The short answer is we have not entertained.
I haven't needed it, yeah.
And if what you're suggesting is that there's economies of scale that can be had with those resources, we can certainly, we can
relive
start those
it.
conversations again. In fact, it probably makes sense for us to once again revisit other potential opportunities for shared services for obvious reasons, and beyond technology would be.
And with Jeremy now on board, it's been working great. I mean, we're getting our own stuff done. We haven't had to reach out to anyone, really. Maybe a little bit on
Well,
the
that's
police with
good.
Munis.
The idea was maybe you wouldn't need Jeremy, but now he's with you. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
100% better, right? You've got some backup, you got someone who's helping you.
I mean, other than during the pandemic, the Board of Ed did lend me a good amount of laptops, which most of them have gone back to them because we put a lot of people mobile now. So something like that we've used them for.
Never hurts to revisit it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 18, economic development. Sherry, thanks for your patience.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
yes.
All right, great. So economic development budget is really very, very little change. It's mostly flat. The only change you'll see is on the salaries. And I think on the report that you see, you have a change going from part-time to full-time. Because as you probably know, we're now sharing my position with Madison. And so they share the salary and it is a full-time position now. Mary Jane can explain how the salary is allocated in terms of ARP funding, if you have a question on that. But I'll just run through the other line items very quickly. They're all the same except for the commission secretary, which of course changes every year too, by a very small amount for an increase in that hourly rate. The program development is still at $1,000. That's for any kind of little workshops that we may want to put on for the business community or events that in the past we've done workshops with SCORE. We've done business recognition events, nothing in the last year or two because of COVID, but we're hoping to get past that and be able to pull businesses together for those kinds of workshops. Business development is also the same amount as in the past. 8,500. That includes the big nut really is the dues that we pay to REX, the economic development organization that serves the region. And then there's a small fee for constant contact, which is what we use to communicate with the business community. And then dues for economic development associations, that sort of thing. I will mention that CEDIS, which is our state economic development organization, the dues that we pay to them is for the entire commission. And we have a brand new chair of our commission, of our EDC, and she's been attending all of their workshops and finding great value from that. Very small amount of money in there for supplies and dues to the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce as well. And then finally on tourism, again, flat, and that is for any advertising that we would like to do or that we have done. We usually partner with the town of North Branford and the town of Brantford to put ads in the Visit New Haven guide that they print each year and the Shoreline Chamber Town Guide that they print each year as well. I'll stop there and see if you have any questions.
Charles, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, but let me preempt you if you wouldn't mind. One of the things that we should be aware of is that the State Economic Development Office is funneling EDC money, federal EDC, federal money from ARP, as well as other funds through pass-through entities. And those pass-through entities are the Regional Council of Governments. However, the Regional Council of Governments is engaged and it is not the established entity, other than the money comes in and then it goes out to, of all people, Rex Development. So Rex Development will be responsible for programs for each of the 13 communities or 15 communities in the Regional Council of Governments. So it's my anticipation, and the first grant that came through was I think it's $500,000, close to $500,000. Which will be distributed through programs that impact each of our communities. So, and it has to include all of our communities. It's not just New Haven Central. So I think for us to walk away from Rex right now, I'm pretty sure this 8,500 or whatever that number is on Rex will probably be reimbursed through this grant disbursement.
Okay, that's good news. My question actually regarding Rex would be, it appears that Rex is maturing a little bit and changing its focus also. But I was wondering, now that we've chosen to work together with Madison, if the fees or anything like that are different, or do they still approach us as two separate towns?
That's a good point. Sherry, do you know, is Madison is part of
Madison
Rex,
is,
right?
yes, Madison is part of Rex, and I can tell you their dues structure is set up so that they charge each municipality a different amount depending on their population. And I forget the exact number, it's 15 cents or something like that per person. And so they would charge Madison a different amount.
And it's
So
unfortunately,
they are charging Madison dues and us dues, even though we're trying to do this as a regional situation.
Correct. And that is a conversation that we can have with them now that the partnership has been established. I think in the past, you know, obviously there were two different people working on economic development with Rex, but
I mean,
happy
we
to
are
bring
trying
that
to
up.
work together on economic development, regional economic development issues, and it just, you know, if the approach is successful, it ought to be successful across the board. So,
yeah.
All right, that's.
It's definitely worth the conversation.
I have a question about that though. Just hearing how they're charging out for the dues, would it really impact the dues? Wouldn't Madison be incrementally charged more for the population of Guilford, even if it was combined together?
So it would be interesting to see how they would do it. I'm sure that they don't want to lose any dues revenue, so they're unlikely to want to combine. Whoops, I lost my lights. They're unlikely to want to combine the dues structure, but you know, it's worth having a conversation with them to find out what the possibilities are.
Yeah, unfortunately, the enrollment is by community, not by economic development director.
Yeah, I wasn't strictly thinking, you know, the dues are important, obviously, and everybody knows the situation with that. I was thinking more of the approach of economic development. I mean, are we approaching this on a regional basis and that type of thing, so that when they're looking at opportunities, they're not looking at town-specific opportunities, that they should realize that we're working together with Madison on regional opportunities also.
We'll definitely have those conversations.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else on economic development? Sherry, thank you very much. Well done. Next up, golf course and Ted Ty. Ted, thanks for your patience as well. It's been a little while in the making here.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Basically, my budget, we just have basically salary increases for the year. We possibly could have a reduced in contracted services by using our website. Presently, right now, Steve Barry's daughter runs our website for the golf course, and possibly working with Tracy in the Selectmen's office, we can possibly work on putting the website together and putting together a little bit better so we can save a few dollars there. But budget wise, those are the two main things that we have in change. A couple new things for 2022, just to run by you. The Golf Course Commission, this is still in the phase. They're talking about hiring the Klein's driving range pro to have lessons here at the golf course. We still have to work out, you know, a fee structure and how we're going to be integrating all that. And also we did me and Steve Barry on the Golf Course Commission, we sat down together and we did a course comparison on rates between the Apple 9, the Portland West, Fenwick golf courses, a couple other local over golf courses. And we did a rate increase at the golf course this year. A few of them just went up $1 or $2. So we will be seeing overall about a 3.3% increase on next year's fees. That's basically what I have for you. Any questions?
I like the idea of collapsing the line item on and moving onto the town website. It makes an awful lot of sense. What kind of progress have you made on that at this point?
Mary Jane, didn't we send Britt an email on that? I haven't heard it from Britt, and I think she wanted to talk to the commission members and see what they want to do for the website and possibly reducing that, but it's something fairly new.
Okay.
But I think it's something that definitely can work out, you know.
Makes sense.
And I think it'll also be better for us because we can adjust the website and make it quicker for Father's Days or for any kind of specials that we want to run to our website a little quicker.
I would wholeheartedly encourage you to move at full speed on that. I'm not sure when we anticipate rolling out the new website, but
Yeah, that's a Tracy question.
that's the only condition. So.
Right. I didn't know exactly where you were with all that, but I'm just saying that's one of the things we can probably definitely reduce.
Yeah.
Other than the rate of greens fees, how have they been running? I know that we had a spike with the pandemic. Has that been holding or?
Yeah. We had a good year, a very good year overall. And, you know, with people being home and working from home, a lot of people are, you know, working from home for a few hours and coming to the golf course and playing, and we're seeing that in the revenue.
A lot of guys skipping out of work.
You gotta work remote and play golf.
Right.
That's when Matt's using his phone.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just trying to pull up the revenues, Charles. Golf course is currently at 57% of their revenue budget, and April, May, and June are still to come. So I think they're going to be relatively close once again.
When do they don't you run annual memberships? When do they start coming in, or are they already in?
Basically, April and May is when we get the memberships.
Okay.
And memberships are what it used to run around 30,000, as I recall. Again. Hold on, I can find it. Give me a second here.
Yeah, I think it was at 33,000 last year. So
I was more concerned about the individual numbers versus the dollars. I know it was up, but
Yeah, your budget is $25,000 for membership. So, and at this point we're at 3%. So, we're $800.
Yeah, those are the.
Those must have been some Christmas presents.
yeah, that's pretty much what they were. Playing cards and I think they're pretty much playing cards and I think one membership.
Got it. Okay. Anything further on golf? Ted, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
You too. All right, Jane, it's kind of all yours.
I'm the rest of the agenda. No. So I'll start with full-time salaries, just like everybody else has mentioned. Contractual increases. Went up a little bit on travel and expense. The mileage rate has gone up. And again, I'll just say that my budget is assuming we're getting next fiscal year, we actually go places. So as opposed to all online. Legal notice and budget publications, you know, that's the cost of putting the budget in the newspaper. Our audit fees are part of the audit fees. Office supplies, we went down just slightly. Office equipment, we kept the same. Permits and dues went down, I have to say. So when I got here, I had the town join Public Purchasing Association of Connecticut because I had been really involved with that organization. So I'm moving that into the legal budget. It's only $35. They've got plenty of money in their legal budget. But it really belongs there because that's purchasing. I wanted to be sure the town had access to that information, and we have used it tremendously since I've been here, but I'm giving it to Peter now. So that's the change there. Under education and training, I do have a large increase. I am asking a couple for the in 2019, we had asked for funding to send Darlene for some additional training through GFOA. Obviously, that was not held, and we turned the money back to the town. She has spoken to GFOA a few times. They are hoping in our next fiscal year to be able to have that opportunity again. And I'd like to provide her with that opportunity. So that's the increase, mainly in that area. So unless you have any other questions.
Any questions for Mary Jane? So that education and training is GFOA, not Munis?
Not Munis. I have Munis training in here as well. The same amount as this year. So this year so far it's supposed to be in person, and I have one staff member that's going to be attending that from my office. So we'll put that in again. But the particular increase of 3,100 is specifically for the one for Darlene to go. It's held in Chicago, right at the GFOA offices. I think it would be absolutely a tremendous opportunity for her to do that.
Okay, any other questions? No? All right. Debt service.
All right.
Some good news?
Yeah, I could share my screen if you want, but I do have a decrease in debt service for this year. Let me share my screen so you can see what it's going to look like. So here's my graph that you guys have all seen in other years. The green arrow represents 2023, so you don't have to read the numbers at the bottom. So we do have a decrease this year, as we've always spoken that the decreases would be coming. So what I've done is this represents all of the debt that we currently have and an estimated additional bond of $5 million coming this next August. We'll probably be bonding somewhere between 3 and 5. I've put in 5. We also have an opportunity for another refunding, but I have not put that into these projections at that time. I've also used premiums. And the reason I wanted to show you this graph is if you can see over the next 5 or 7 years, how there's a very steady decrease in debt. I have used the bond premiums to smooth that out, because as we go along, the debt kind of goes down, up, down, up, down, depending on when that first big principal payment is due. So to spread that out, I have done so for 5 of those years, have use of premiums. I did not estimate any additional premiums coming through, although there's a very likely opportunity for that. So I'm showing right now between interest, a slight increase in interest, and that's because with the refundings, just like your any other type of loan, you got the first payment always has the most interest and less principal. So as we refund our loans, the original interest would have been going down. We refund, now we have a larger interest. So that's why the interest is going up. It's only $35,000, but that's what that represents. The decrease is in the principal, and primarily because of all of those refundings. So $156,000 reduction at this point in debt.
Excellent. How soon do you think we could get an estimate on the possibility of refunding, and can we, would we be able to get it in time to include it in the budget deliberation?
I could. The company that we used for the past 2 refundings has already notified me that we have an opportunity. Certainly, they already have estimates.
Okay,
I was somewhat reluctant to add those in,
right.
because from, between today and the time that we're able to do it, it might change, but I could easily put those in for us to look at.
Okay. And then with the volatility in the markets these days, particularly with interest rates, estimating out a few months, is there a timeline before which we can't refund? There are usually some.
Right, each
dates
bond has its own window of opportunity.
Okay.
And, Bob Hartman might be able to talk more eloquently than I can on it, but, so we would have that window of opportunity, so I can certainly, look into that, and
Okay.
I can embed those numbers into this, and we can look at it a different way. And certainly between now and the time that the budget is finalized, we'll have opportunities to do that as well.
Possibly.
This represents the best that I know today.
Right, we know this is in our pocket.
Correct.
Right. Good. And the real dollars on this is 156,000, I think, is that the
Right.
number?
Thanks.
A decrease of 156,000. That's excellent.
Bob?
I'm just curious, do we know what size, what amount would be eligible for refinancing?
I do have it all in an email from Raymond James, and we can discuss it offline unless you want me to try to find it.
No. Yeah, no, fingers crossed. Just keep on going with the program.
That's. Anybody else on debt service? Okay. Contingency,
Nothing,
0.
nothing.
It still stays in our budget, still
well,
stays in the budget.
It's a thing, yeah, it's on the list, so.
Well, maybe there's a year where we could throw something there just to satisfy Mary Jane, keep it
Yeah, I mean, we do have contingency, it's just buried in a lot of different places.
places, right?
Well,
So
I like to just keep that line item, because then we do have this conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do we need it? Do we not?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
we have the reserve for personnel. That's kind of a large contingency for us already. So
Great.
that's everything.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. And Mary Jane, thanks for pulling all this together, as you always do, to make this work. Jonathan and
Yeah.
Bob and Jeff, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your input.
Are you
And
sure about that?
with one exception, John, that's all, that's all. We can agree to disagree on certain things and agree on others. So did anybody have any comments or questions or
I just want to comment on next steps.
next steps? Yeah.
So you should have received an email yesterday from Tracy. We finalized the budget workshop, so we start January 31st, February 2nd, the 4th, and your meeting of the 7th, we have you finalizing. So we have those 4 opportunities to
Okay.
finalize. I've already begun working specifically on capital. I have a meeting set with Matt next Wednesday to review the recommendations that we come forward with to the Board of Selectmen with. So hopefully Matt and I meet on next Wednesday and agree on that. You'll have it on your board pack by the weekend.
Thank you.
We will be going on a capital diet.
Yes.
I already have a proposal that cuts the capital in half, so.
Yeah.
Good.
That was the easier one,
Excellent.
easier
Alright.
one to do.
All right.
Anybody else with anything for the good of the order?
No, I'm all set.
Thank you all, and I got you out of here before the 12:30 target timeline, or you got yourselves out of here. Let me put it that way.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you all. Motion to adjourn for Board of Selectmen.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye now.